we're going to explore a little bit. So bear with me on this. But we're going to talk about prison transports. I have one gentleman coming from Texas, another gentleman coming out of New York. Both of them have histories with doing prison transport. So we're going to tell you exactly what it takes to get a successful transport. Recently, we've been having some escapes, and I think it's good knowledge for us to know exactly what's happening behind the scenes when we are maneuvering inmates. Now, I'm going to bring my guest on shortly. Just want to tell you I have 3 sponsors. If you guys get a chance, check out American Military University. They're a great college, good online learning. We also have Guardian RFID, and we also have Shea USA for our metal detectors. I want to kind of keep this moving, so I had the sponsors a little bit quick here today because I have my guests waiting in the wings. So, guys, again, we're going to be discussing prison transports. I'm going to go to a video first, and I also have some bonus stuff I would like to show you if you guys are interested, which I'll ask again in a bit. I do have some videos on proper handcuffing of a compliant individual, so you'll see how we handcuff individuals as we're transporting them to and from location in a prison. Plus, in the incident that happened in Texas with Lopez, the officer had a gun, and as he was being stabbed in the hand, he was trying to hold on to his gun, what they call weapons retention. I have a video there to show you exactly what weapon retention is. So if you guys are interested in seeing those videos, we'll pop them in during the discussion. All right, guys, so I got 2 new people coming in. First guest we have is Joe Pomponio. What's up, Joe?
Evening, guys. How's everybody?
Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes, sir. I'm Joe Pomponio, live in Texas, and I was with the Texas Department of Corrections for 29 years, 6 months and 18 days, 24 of which I was a lieutenant, and just retired November 30th of 21.
And, Joe, you have experience doing prison transports, I take it?
Many.
Okay, so we're going to get into those, guys, so bear with them. I just want to make sure I bring in my guest. Hello, Sharon. How you doing? Or Sherilyn. All right, we also have Greg Carter, who's also coming in. What's up, Greg?
How we doing, guys?
Can you hear us? There it is. Hey, Greg, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name's Greg Carter. I've got roughly 30 years experience total. Did 25 years with New York State Department of Corrections. Worked at 4 or 5 different jails, taught an academy for my last 9 years on and off. We had to rotate back to the academy once in a while. Missed that part. That was good. Retired in May of 15, moved to Kentucky, and now I work for a local sheriff's department, and I'm the lead transport officer for their department, and I've implemented a different protocol because they've had some security breaches in the past, and we're hoping to stop anything from that happening again.
Yeah. Well, lately we've been having some escapes. We had one out of Oregon, one out of Indiana, one out of Texas. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you know what goes behind the scenes during an escape. So just first, to familiarize everybody what's happening, guys, I need you to bear with me. I'm going to do about a 5 or 10 minute video real quick on the escape that happened in Texas, because that seems to be the big one. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
So there's a lot of questions there. So guys, keep them coming. But I just want to show everybody the video first. So bear with me. And here we go.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Marnie Hughes. We start with some breaking news out of Texas. Another fugitive is on the run. A murderer so dangerous that just within the last few hours, authorities have added him to the state's top 10 most wanted fugitives list. His name is Gonzalo Lopez. He is serving a life sentence for capital murder and attempted capital murder. Authorities say he assaulted a corrections officer on a bus that was transporting prisoners yesterday, crashed that bus, and then he got away. Authorities are warning people in that area tonight, lock your doors, lock your cars, and stay inside. Some schools even went on lockdown within the last few hours. Senior national correspondent Brian Enton joining us live in Centerville, Texas tonight with the latest on this manhunt. Brian.
Marnie, this is especially disturbing because this man is so dangerous and because there have been no sightings of him up until now. So many questions about how this could have happened. We are told that he was shackled at his feet and he also had handcuffs on. He somehow managed to get out of both of those. He used some kind of tool to break into the cage where the driver was and managed to take over the bus.
To build customer delight, you need to identify and fix bad user experience. Hotjar's heat maps let you see where users scroll.
Gotta love the commercial.
The plugins let you see your site.
The search for Gonzalo Lopez continues.
In Centerville, Texas, all eyes are on the woods just west of Interstate 75.
12, 13 cars, helicopters, horses, dogs. Sometimes there's been 200-300 people right here.
James Kavanaugh has been watching since this all began Thursday afternoon. He says he figures with this many law enforcement out, Centerville is the safest place in Texas right now. In all, more than 300 law enforcement officers have swarmed this area, and there is now a $15,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Gonzalo Lopez.
This man is a very dangerous person. If you see him, do not attempt to take him into custody by yourself. Contact 911. Have local law enforcement deal with him. He is someone not to be reckoned with by yourself.
So why are they so concerned about Lopez? Well, not only did he overpower 2 guards in yesterday's escape, his rap sheet includes several extremely violent attacks.
He has a capital murder conviction out of Hidalgo County. He also has an attempted capital murder conviction out of Webb County. He killed a man in 2005 with a pickaxe after kidnapping the man and asking for a ransom for his return.
Of course, the biggest question now is where is the fugitive? But as the investigation into what happened continues, there are other tough questions the Department of Criminal Justice must answer. Can you describe the restraints that he had on in the bus? Was he shackled? And how is it possible that he was able to get out of those?
He was wearing handcuffs. He had handcuffs, leg restraints also. How he got out of them, we do not know.
So he got out of the handcuffs and the leg restraints?
Yeah, he got up into the driver's compartment. Are you aware of what happened?
Yes.
He got up into the driver's compartment. He had nothing on his legs or in his head when he took out across the cow pasture.
And so right now there is a $15,000 reward for any information that could lead to this inmate. They're using horses and they've got dogs out in the woods behind me and they expect to search.
All right, guys. So obviously, I'm sure everybody knows it's changed to 50,000, right? Joe?
Yes, sir. As of today, they upped the reward to $50,000.
All right, now, real quick, guys. There's a couple of questions coming from the audience, but I want to go over, just give people an understanding of some terminology that we'll be using. Can we explain? And I'll start with Joe first, and then we'll go to Greg. Can we explain what a high-risk transport is?
High-risk transports in the state of Texas are for individuals that have what they call security precaution designators. Either they're assaultive toward staff, they're considered an escape risk, or they have a history of defeating restraints. In that instance, when they're transported, they should be in hand restraints along with a blue or black box, depending on what you have or what your facility uses. A belly belt with a leg chain going down to the leg restraints.
Right. And Greg, your thoughts on high-risk restraint? I know you're out of New York, correct? Anything different than what Joe got?
Now out of Kentucky. We use a black box, waist chain with 2 padlocks, leg irons, double lock everything. Black box protects the openings of the cuff holes and the double locking mechanism. We do it the same every single time. Black box, 2 padlocks, waist chain, handcuffs, double locked, leg irons, double locked. High risk would be high assaultive or escape risk or something like that.
Hey, Greg, you have a black box in front of you, correct? Can you show it?
I do, sir. Yep. So this is called the hinge cover. This is the black box itself. What it does, it actually just goes around the handcuffs. If I can try to show that the best way I can, it actually covers the keyholes and the double locking mechanism. And then the hinge cover simply goes over the top of it. Then your chain, you get a square stock of your chain, goes through the black box like this. Take the other, wrap the chain around the inmate, padlock it around their waist so it's tight around the waist, so it can't fall off their waist. And then you take the chain and actually put it up through the square link, and then bring this back around and padlock that around the back of the inmate. Preferably, you put the locks out of reach where the inmate can have access to them. Any way you can make access to the mechanisms more of a deterrent for the inmate, the better. We always make sure we put our leg irons with our keyholes facing down towards the floor so the inmate cannot manipulate the keyholes. And the keyholes for the handcuffs face the inmate's belly. So even if they do try to attempt to get to that, it's a lot harder to get it if it's on the inside rather than just sticking out where they can just manipulate it with a bobby pin or paper clip, anything like that.
I'll go with Joe first. Alicia says the black box makes the handcuffs tamper-proof. Is that standard in the industry now?
I don't know if it's standard in all states. It became pretty much a standard for us several years back. At one point, they were trying to go to a hinge style cuff, and they found that was more faulty than the original cuffs. At which point, they brought in the black box and the blue boxes, which is it's kind of interesting because you played that video, and the first thing I made a mental note of was the fact that they mentioned hand restraints and leg restraints. They just said nothing about a waist belt, belly chain, black box, or any of that. You know, it makes me wonder if he was actually wearing them, especially with his level of custody that he was.
Well, I don't know if the media would know all that. That's the concern. You're right. I don't know if the media would know every piece of equipment that we have. I think in their mind, all they see is handcuffs and shackles, to be honest with you. Hey, Greg, what's your thoughts on the black box? I mean, do you find that to be tamper-proof, or do you find that, it could be tampered with?
It could be. I do have a video that I used to show my recruits of an inmate actually getting out of a set of handcuffs with a black box, but he was using a pair of Peerless style handcuffs where the double lock mechanism is a push pin style. And if you hit the handcuffs hard enough against a cement wall or brick wall, it'll pop out the pin, which is your double locking mechanism. Then you can still manipulate the handcuffs, the spring loaded teeth to release them. But if you use the Smith & Wesson style, they have the slide bar lock for the double lock. It's basically, I have found it's almost foolproof. You can't unlock the double lock. Much better secure. I do not transport any inmate out of county without a black box, waist chain, and double locks. It's our policy at our county sheriff's department.
Yeah, and David still says if you're using a black box for high risk, they make what we call mittens we can use in addition. Does anybody know what the mittens are, Joe or Greg?
No, I can't say I'm familiar with the mittens.
Maybe I can.
I've seen pictures of them, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with how they operate or how they work.
So you know what I'll do? Hey, Dave, I'm going to send you an email or I'll send you a message on Facebook. I want to give my audience all the knowledge they can get. Dave, if you're willing to come on and explain what the mittens are, I'd be more than willing to have you on. Just let me know. I want to also mention something too, real quick. They asked about, are the black boxes expensive? Joe, you want to go first?
I'm sorry, repeat that question, Anthony.
Are the black boxes expensive?
Not really. You got to remember we're in a state where we have, at one point we had 107 units statewide. And, over the years we've lost a few. So figure, for the black boxes, we're probably getting a pretty good deal in order to supply, the remaining 90 plus facilities that we have left in operation. So I don't figure that they're that expensive.
All right. And then what's your thoughts on that, Greg?
They're inexpensive way to make sure that you keep the inmate secure. As far as I know right now, it's probably the most secure way to transport high risk or even regular inmates. The 30 years I've been using them, I don't know of anybody personally that's escaped from either New York State transportation or our local area here, there are a lot of agencies that do not use the black box, and you hear of escapes all the time just using cuffs and leg irons. I'm surprised modern times that it's not an industry standard across the country at local places and also big places. I actually interviewed for a transport company, I won't say where, and when I asked them about the black box, they didn't even know what it was. And this is a national transportation of prisoners company. And I said, okay, thank you. And I was out of the interview. No, thank you. No.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you something. A lot of the people in the audience, we have over 150 now, are very interested in the procedures that happen in regards to doing a transport. So we're talking about taking the inmate, checking the vehicle and whatnot. But there's one question I want to get out first before we go into that routine. Why would some buses or vans not have cameras inside the transport vehicle? Wouldn't we think that they all should have cameras inside the transport vehicle? I'll start with Greg first on that one.
Larger transports, I believe most of them do. Our local jail next door, which is run separately than our sheriff's department, their transport vans do have video. They do have cameras for all their sections. At my local sheriff's department, we usually only transport one or two at a time. So it's not a large group of individuals. We have our petition in the back. We have two people in the vehicle. One officer's job is to observe the movement of the individual, making sure they're not trying to escape or be incoherent or unruly or anything like that. We don't transport large groups of individuals at our local sheriff's department. New York State, they did have big Greyhound style transport buses with cages. When I left, I don't remember if they had video on those big buses or not. I don't know.
And
cost could probably have a lot to do with it.
Well, what's your thoughts on that, Joe?
I think it'd be a great idea if they all did. As a standard, they don't. Know for a fact most of our chain buses do not. Our transport vans definitely do not. It'd be great to have as added evidence. This is a first that I know of in the last 30 years of any kind of escape attempt that involved a chain bus. I know of a couple that happened with vans, and it was a 2-officer, 1 inmate escort. But as far as chain buses, first that I've ever heard in TDCJ history.
Right. Hey, John mentioned cuffs should also be put on the right way, keyholes in the belly and keyholes down to the floor. I could do this, guys. I have a video right now that's on standby here if you guys want to see it. It's not going to be how we handcuff and shackle inmates. It's just going to be the handcuff part. So basically, this would be something routine that we would do to a compliant inmate if we had to escort them for whatever reason from one area of the facility to the other. If you guys are interested in seeing that video, let me know, and I'll put it in right away so you guys could see how complicated it is actually to speed load and put these cuffs on. I think it's a great video, but again, it's just more of an escort video. If we're going to be moving an inmate from point A to point B, when you're doing a transport, it's going to be a lot more complex. Would you agree with that, Greg?
Yeah, it's more controlled. You have more amount of time and more security protocols. You usually have a few extra staff around assisting you to making sure everything's going okay. Again, a more controlled situation, but it's a longer term thing too. If you're just escorting an inmate from a certain area to another area, that's something different. You're actually taking out of the confines of the secure part of the facility. You want to do diligent work and make sure you do the black box and the chain and the cuffs and the padlocks and all that. That's different than just escorting a person from point A to point B within the facility.
Right. And guys, if you want to see the handcuffs, so I know, just say handcuffs in the comments. I see people saying they want to see it, but I just want to make sure it's what we want to see because I can put it on right now. We are getting some more questions coming in. How did he? Okay, so we're gonna do that, guys. So let's talk about the. Oh, we have David Still on. Hold on, let me get David Still. Hey, Dave, you mentioned guys. David Still. You know what, Dave? I feel like we're in intervention right now. So, hi, David Still. How are you?
How you doing?
Hey, Dave, well, let's do that. Okay, we're getting handcuffs. People want to see that video. But first, Dave, mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Yeah, I won't tell about the system I'm in, but I've worked 24 years, maximum security. That's all I've ever done. Right now, I'm supervising transports, and we do high risks every day. And something that I'd like to point out is if you have a high risk guy, we transport them by themselves. We don't put them on buses. We don't transfer them with other guys. We run them by themselves. And then we also run a trail vehicle. So if there's an issue and a vehicle pulls over, we've got help right there.
All right, so we're going to get to all that, by the way, but let's get to foreshadow that. Hey, you mentioned mittens real quick. So how does mittens work with the black box?
The mittens are basically just a tube. They're covered with Kevlar. You secure them with Velcro, and then they also have a place for flex cuffs. And they go over the hands. They go over the hands. They cover from the wrist. Let me get over here. From the wrist, and they cover the hand, and it's just one big circle. And basically what it is they can't touch anything. They can't manipulate anything. And we use that in addition to the black box and cuffs.
All right, so what I'm going to do, guys, so handcuffs are a lot more difficult to place on than people think. So this video is pretty much going to show you just the standard application of handcuffs. The instructor is going to tell you how to do it. It's my boy, Michael Wolfert. Good people in my state. We're trained in MMA. And this is, again, if you have a compliant inmate and we're just going to transport them from one point to another. I'm thinking more of like, let's say it's an overnight shift and you got an inmate that's got to go to medical when the facility's locked down. That would be a good time to make sure the inmate's secured and you escort them. Okay, guys, so bear with me. I'm going to show you guys now. I'm learning this stuff, guys. I'm became an expert. Not really, but all right, here we go, guys. All right, let's do this.
Basically, some basic handcuffing principles and concepts that you could utilize to keep yourself safe. All right, so what we're going to cover now is how you place your equipment on your duty belt. Today, we're going to be talking about the handcuffs. So what you want to do is you want to put the single bars facing the center line, right? Single bars, the part that turns. The keyholes are going to be together, chain down. Right, that's how you're going to place it inside of whatever carry method you use, whether it's a pouch, whether it's a strap, any type of carry method that's comfortable for you to use that has good retention. One of the other key things you want to do is obviously load the handcuffs. What does load the handcuff mean? It pretty much means that the single bar is the only one that turns. So when you load the cuffs, a couple teeth are going to come outside the back side of the cuff. And what that's going to do is when you touch the cuff to the wrist, you push down on the cuff and pull up on the hand, therefore making a complete circle, and the cuff should catch on the other end, therefore making it closed. One of the primary things people foul is their grip. And that's because a lot of times people are going to switch hands. One of the primary things of not to do is switch hands during handcuffing. Because once you get your grip, you want to have it the entire way through the handcuffing process. So what I mean by switching grips is the people put on handcuffs and then they'll switch their grip and put it to the other hand. Look what happens to the grip. It becomes compromised. Therefore, the grip that we get from the beginning, out of the holster, out of the strap, wants to be the entire grip for the entire handcuffing process. So what's that grip look like? Pretty much, if you can see the handcuff here, the chain is going to be pulled tight. A lot of people you're going to see, they're going to crunch the chain together and attempt to grab what we call a pistol grip, but they're not going to get a true pistol grip because these are going to start to bend. So what you want to do is pull the chain tight. You'll see, depending on the size of your hand now, because that's going to be part of a good grip. I use my 3 fingers on the chain, and if you could see the back of the handcuff, it has a little notch right there. Now that notch is going to be primarily going to be for your pinky down here, as well as right underneath where your thumb's going to go. So now my thumb controls the top cuff and my pinky now controls the bottom cuff. And it makes a stable platform that they're going to go on with 0 deviation. So it's like a straight bar when they go on. And that's really depending on the size of your hand. But as you can see, the thumb really controls the swivel of that top cuff, as well as my pinky driving in and getting this kind of angled grip is going to make that now have a little bit of not as much play as with if I just grab the chain here and this starts to swivel. So you really want to have that nice firm grip, and it's going to go down the entire time as putting the handcuffs on. Other hand, small back. All right, so now we're going to talk about tactically removing the handcuffs. In a 100% compliance handcuffing situation, you should have placed the cuffs on so the keyholes are facing you once this person bends at the waist. So bend at the waist, and right now the keyhole should be looking directly into your eye. Therefore, there should be zero deviation. Now what happens is, I tell people to tread on this person's foot right here. Basically, just take my toes, put them on this person's toes. If I don't control the foot, he now can kick, stomp, run, but by placing some light pressure on the foot, basically not stomping on the foot, just light pressure. As soon as this person moves his foot, I already know where it's at. All right. Now I tell him to bend at the waist. I place my elbow in his back. If he tries to sit back up, I can feel that pressure once again, drive it down. I get out my key. I like to grab the pistol grip once again the same way I put it on with my strong hand. I take the cuff off furthest away from me first. And the reason I do that is if I have a problem, I want to be holding the cuff closest to me, and that's where I'm strongest, instead of reaching across the guy's body fighting for a handcuff. The handcuff on a person now becomes a weapon if I lose control of it. So I put the key in. I always get a verbal command. When I take this cuff off, put your hand on top of your head. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I always get a verbal command. Open the cuff up with my other finger. Always make sure to close the swinging gate, meaning don't leave this gate lying around. If this becomes a weapon, this will very easily go into your eye or skin. Close the swinging gate. When I take this cuff off, put your hand on top of your head. Do you understand? Yes, sir. And then we step away. When I take this cuff off, put your hand on top of your head. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Always get a verbal command. Same thing. Take this cuff off, put your hand on top of your head. Yes, sir. All right, so now Andre's going to come out from defensive fit, and he's going to go through basic handcuffing positions. When I say by positions, I mean right now we're dealing with compliant handcuffing, 100% compliant. Is there a gray area of compliance? No. It's either compliance or non-compliance. There's no quasi-semi-compliance. So what are the most dangerous parts of handcuffing? Well, it's upon first touch. That's when the person's going to make the decision, A, to comply 100% or fight. And what happens is the most dangerous part of handcuffing is the fake compliance, meaning they're obeying all your commands, they're doing everything that you want them to do and that you're instructing them to do, but upon first touch is when they flip the switch and they realize, hey, now cuffs are going on, this is becoming real, and now it's either fight or flight for them at that point. So a lot of things that dictate our structure as well as the threat level of how we're going to handcuff this person depending upon either it's standing, kneeling, prone position. Here today, we're just going to primarily deal with standing and a kneeling person. We're not going to do the prone here today. And this is going to be 100% compliant of what the person's doing. So meaning every order I give, and when I say give orders, it's clear, concise instructions. A lot of times people want to give ambiguous things for people to do, but let's face it, if you could barely understand what you're saying, the bad guy's not going to understand what you're saying either. That's why it's to be clear and concise. That's why we're going to try to avoid certain terms that we're going to use, and you'll see that as we go through the instruction. So pretty much when I visualize somebody, the first things I want to do is look at what? Hands. So this posture here is going to be something I don't want to see, because I want to see, put your hands out like an airplane, palms facing me, out to the side, all the way up, palms facing me. This is what I want to see first. And why do I want to see that? Because hands kill. I want to be able to right now inspect the waistband, right? So before I get close and I want to do a visual inspection, make sure this person's not carrying weapons, especially in the hands. From that point, I put your hand on the top of your head. Turn away from the sound of my voice. Turn away, turn around, turn around. And right now, it basically turns away from me. So all handcuffing, if you can, is going to be dictated from handcuffing from the back of the person. There are going to be maybe some types you're going to handcuff in the front. It's not recommended at any time, but sometimes you have to do certain circumstances, structures, they dictate a handcuffing in the front method. Here we're going to tell you handcuff in the rear always if possible, right? And structure dictates a lot of that time, as well as the threat level, how fast you got to get cuffs on. There's a lot of things that you have to look at. So now that we did a visual inspection, we've turned the person away from us. What we want to do is we want to say, put your left hand in the small of your back. And we're doing that. We're saying the left hand as opposed to the right hand. And we're not saying both hands at the same time. So I say, put both hands in the small of your back. Well, look how crowded that really becomes. It gives me no room to work. So put your right hand back on top of your head. And I say the left hand is because if the person's carrying a weapon, especially a firearm, now, if they're right-handed, which a large percent of the population is going to be, the grip of the firearm is going to be oriented towards grabbing it with your right hand. So we're trying to keep that right hand out of the small of the back. So that's what we're saying, the left hand. Because even if it was a knife, it was a gun, a large percentage of the population is right hand. Therefore, if they're going to use a weapon against you, they're going to use their strong hand. So we're trying to control the strong hand as well as make the left hand accessible. So I'm a right-handed handcuff person. So what I'm going to do right here, left hand, the small of your back. At that time, he's 100% compliant. I do not take my handcuffs out until the person is 100% compliant, because at any time, this turns into from a compliant situation to a non-compliant situation. Like we said, upon first touch is when that can happen. So I don't want to be fumbling, taking my handcuffs out before the guy assumes a 100% handcuffing compliant position, because he very could turn at any moment, right? So always be ready. So you take your defensive stance, you take your handcuffs out at that time, 100% compliance. I grab a handshake grip from the person. I pull the hand away from the body. I touch the cuff to the wrist. I push the cuff down and I pull the hand up, using my finger to assist. At this time, take your other hand, put the small of your back. I grab the back of the knuckles. I turn the thumb towards me. I pull it away from the body, and I push the cuff down. Now, handcuffed. I didn't switch my grip. I have the back of the hand here. At this time now, I can grab the elbow, and I can do an escort position. All right, so we're just going to show you a variation of the standing handcuffing. Now, kneeling the person down is always going to have a safer outcome, but there's a lot of factors involved with kneeling a person down. Could be structural, could be the person ability to kneel down, could be wanting to move a person out of an area quickly and not go through this. It's a longer process to kneel the person down. So really, it's up to you, but we're going to tell you is kneeling the person down is always going to have a safer outcome than not kneeling the person down. All right, so face the person. Always take your visual. Put your arms like an airplane, palms facing me. Put your hand on top of your head. Turn right from the sound of my voice. Get down your left knee. Get down your right knee. Cross your ankles. Sit on your heels. Lean forward. Put your left hand on the small of your back. So the same process is going on. Give your other hand smaller back. Uncross your feet. All right. Get up on this leg. Other leg. All right. Stretch feet. Now, you get to wherever you got to go. Now, tell the person to kneel down. Kneel down on the far leg, this leg. Now, the reason we tell the person get up on the close leg and down on the far is right now, drive into me. Okay. Reverse your feet. Put this leg down, grab one. Now drive into me. You can see the power of driving in. Switch your feet again. Okay, drive into me. I mean, just with my single hand here, it's very hard for him to drive in. And that's why we always want to get up and down with the far knee furthest from us. Okay, stand up. And now we have our escort position. We get to wherever we got to go. Same thing. Kneel down this leg. Other leg. Cross your ankles. Sit on your heels. Lean forward. We put the elbow below our knee. The elbow is in the small of the back here. That's going to pin the person down. Now take this cuff off, put your hand on top of your head. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Always get a verbal command. Always close the swinging gate. Now, what do we want to know? Sit up real quick. Now, lay back down. You see his feet. So what happens is we want to cross the feet. If we can't, we want to at least uncross your feet, put your laces on the ground, and sit back. And also, if we can't cross the feet, because some people may not be able to, we want to at least get this position here. Now, what we don't want to see is get on your toes. So there we go. We don't want to see this. We call this loaded toes. And the reason is spring up, if you can. It's very easy for a person to spring up when the toes are loaded. So that's one of the key things you want to look at when you're kneeling a person down for your Once again, I'm Mike Wolford. I want to thanks for you guys for tuning in, getting some handcuffing tips here.
All right. So that was my boy, Mike Wolford. He owns Justifiable Force, and his friend, Andre Tosado. Later on, when we talk about weapon retention, because there's going to be a moment during this escape where the inmate was stabbing the officer in the hand, and the officer was trying to hold on to his gun. If you guys are interested in seeing that video, I also have that put on standby. But guys, just let me just mention this. This is for a compliant inmate. I just want you guys to know that. It's for a compliant inmate. Now, with that said, I'll go to Greg first. Greg, on top of what we just went through, what else would you be doing when securing that inmate for a transport? Hold on, me unmute you. You're muted.
Okay, let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, you're back. You're unmuted.
Okay. Transport is a total different scenario than a live arrest. That person's arresting somebody on the street or possibly on a gallery or something like that. Transport's more controlled, totally different aspect. What he was teaching was great for a street or, like you say, walking from a company to a company or something inside the facility. But when you are transporting outside, you're going to handcuff in the front. You're going to have a black box. You're going to frisk the person before you put the restraints on. When you're out on the street or in a different environment, sometimes you want to control the hands first, then do the frisking. But when you're doing a transport, most of the time you're going to be a controlled area with several other personnel with you that can possibly react if something's going on. The inmate doesn't want to comply. Very rare we find inmates do not want to comply with transports. They know they're going outside. Again, different procedure, different scenario, more controlled.
Right. Now, guys, there's a question of, do inmates always know when they're going out on escort? And technically, we try to protect that as best we can. We may tell them that they have a medical appointment. We may not tell them what day it is. They may know they have to go to court. They may not know what day it is. What's your thoughts on that, Dave? Do we try to be a little bit secretive when they're going out of the facility?
I've been in doctor's offices where the nurse comes in. She thinks she's dealing with a regular patient. She'll come in. She'll say, hey, you've got an appointment next on the 26th. We'll take that lady out of the office and we'll say, you need to give him a new appointment. And you tell us, you do not tell him. We go so far as sometimes when we NPO a guy or nothing to eat or drink, we go over and tell them at 11 o'clock the night before, just so they don't have opportunity to use the phone, or somebody else in the housing unit can call and say, hey, he's going out tomorrow, so they have things to do that. But, we go to a lot of extremes to make sure they don't know when they're going to go.
And would that be the same thing for courts, Joe?
No, as far as ours is a little different. We try to know, we notify them as late as possible. Because in our state, we got to pack their property the night before, have it inventoried and ready for either storage or transport, depending on how long they're going to be gone. If it's for like an inpatient surgery or something, they have to take, a minimal amount of property with them. So, as far as court proceedings, a little different, but definitely, when it comes to the use of hand restraints inside a penitentiary, for transport, way different than the video depicts. It's great for arrest and stuff on the street, but inside the penitentiary, moving from one area to the facility to another, could be doable. But as far as transports, yeah, I mean, just like Greg said, we have to cuff them in the front because we have to utilize the black box or the blue box. So it's a little more controlled and in a much different aspect.
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know, that there was a difference, which is great. We said that, but again, still being a great movie for those routine, a great video for those routine escorts. And Kachera asked a really good question. What would you do with someone that has movement issues? I have rheumatoid arthritis and literally cannot get up off the floor unless I have something to lean on. I could start first where if we find out that's the case, we definitely go to medical first. Medical is going to have to confirm this right off the bat. If medical doesn't confirm it, we're going to treat it like a normal escort because, again, if the person's lying about these things, that can help them because we're going to soften our measures. But I'll start with Greg first on that. Have you ever had any concerns with someone that did have medical concerns when being secured?
Well, we're going to know that ahead of time. We're going to try to get all that information before we even start the procedure. We've got a procedure that I've implemented and I've gotten used to from New York State. We put the inmates' knees on a bench or in a chair. We put the leg irons on first. Therefore, if they do happen to fall, they have their hands to brace themselves or protect themselves or whatever. And it's a much better, safer idea because if their knees are on a bench or in a chair, there's a lot less chance they're going to kick you. Like the video you showed, you're going to feel or see if somebody's going to try to do something when their knees are in the chair. It's a lot harder for them and a lot easier for you to react to control the situation. As far as medical, we have procedures like pregnant women. We can't put belly chains on a pregnant women, things like that. But most of the time, we're going to check medical first. We're not going to take the inmate's word for it. Inmate's an inmate, and you got to keep that in mind. An inmate is an inmate is an inmate, no matter what.
Yeah, guys, remember what he said. I know he went out a little bit, but you cannot put chains on a handcuffed woman, on a pregnant woman. And also, guys, remember when there's a woman that's pregnant, we're also responsible for that baby's life. So, you definitely cannot have a woman, if you are going to handcuff, which you could try to avoid it, but sometimes there could be concerns. The last thing you want to do is handcuff them from the back, because if they fall, they could fall directly on their stomach. So again, that's a tough one. I have a whole video on dealing with pregnant women, because believe it or not, a lot of facilities didn't even have those policies in play when transforming a pregnant woman. A lot of those policies were developed because of us, those on the front line, who said, you know what, if something happens to this woman or the baby, that's on us. Oh, wait, hold on, guys. Look who just came in. Russ Hamilton. Russ.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Man, you guys look like you're having so much fun that I just had to come and join it. And man, you guys are rocking the whole thing tonight, man. It's this is great seeing all these guys on here.
Hey, Russ, do you mind? By the way, we're almost at 200 people in here. John says we should do a docuseries on Netflix. Trust me, if it's out there, it's out there. We would love to do it. Hey, Russ, can you introduce yourself to our audience real quick?
Yeah, my name's Russ Hamilton. I'm a former and retired sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Started at San Quentin in 1989. After I retired, I actually went to work as senior correctional officer for a local juvenile detention facility near here. I now work for a private company that does reentry and rehabilitation for a local jail, of which I am the case manager for that, and for a local probation department.
And guys, if you've been following the channel, it's kind of unique to see Russ evolve. Russ, when we've been doing this for quite some time. I think Deer Talk's been around for almost a decade now. Over almost 21,000 subscribers here, 33,000 on Facebook. I mean, I've been blessed to do national appearances. To kind of see Russ, who was that San Quentin guy, and safety and security, and now he's programming people. Russ, hats off, man. I mean,
you should just see Anthony. My knuckles barely touch the ground at all now.
Oh yeah, Russ was one of the original knuckle draggers. Yes, he was. Hey guys, so I thought we could do now is really get to the nuts and bolts of this dialogue. So the key here, guys, is that the biggest concern here, the one out of Texas, which one we're focusing on, Lopez, was that he was able to get out of the shackles, which we just mentioned are super secured, and then was able to actually get through the mesh and then get to the officer. So before we go to the prison transport bus, I would like you guys to kind of talk about what measures are taken when you take that inmate. Now, mind you, guys, I don't care who strips or checks the inmate before me. If it's my inmate, I'm still checking them. That's my job. So that inmate may get stripped twice in a row. Either way, they're getting stripped by me because he's my responsibility, because I'm in charge of the transport. So I'll start with Russ first, then we'll go around here. But I would like to talk about we're preparing the inmate for the transport. So we're not going to the truck or the van yet. We're just preparing the inmate for the transport. What are our procedures here? So go ahead, Russ.
A lot of the procedures that you're doing depends not just on policy and procedure, but what you have at your disposal. Obviously, I would like to, walk them through a magnetometer if possible. If not that, wand them or whatever. This guy, whatever he did, he managed to defeat the shackles, defeat the handcuffs, and then managed to, cut himself into the front crew compartment like that. That kind of only suggests to me that he might have had some kind of outside help, unless unless he was just really counting on the strip search going horribly wrong, and he was just extra talented and could hide that all the way up there. So I start with that, get them through the magnetometer, do the strip search on them, make sure that you don't give them the same clothing that they had before. Everything should be changed out, even the footwear, because they could have, hidden a piece of wire or something in there that you may not be able to find, especially if we're stripping, multiple people. In this case, this guy was so dangerous. He had, 2 potential capital cases over him, and they're putting him on a bus with how many others? 16 others, I believe. I think that was really short-sighted to even do that. And then from that point there, you want to make sure that the shackles are 100%, in place, and that you've got. I mean, these guys bringing up the black box. I wish that we'd had those in California, and we actually had a couple of times inmates got shot, in pursuit after they escaped because we didn't have a black box, and they were able to shim the handcuffs.
Hey, Russ, wait, I just wanted to back up with you for 1 second. Hey, by the way, I know everybody says Bluebird buses. Cool thing about that is, that one of the original names for the Aryan Brotherhood was the Bluebird Gang, because they named themselves after the buses. Hey, Russ, can you explain real quick before we get to the other guys? You said that the magnetometer, people may not know what that is. Can you say what that is?
Okay, so that's just a metal detector. It's the same one, usually that you go through the airport with. Most of the time, we would send someone through, and if if they didn't pass, then we would do a hand wand thing. We actually had an incident when I was at San Quentin where we had San Francisco County bringing Richard Ramirez back, and he had a handcuff key on him. I bet everyone here can guess where the handcuff key was, actually, and it was hidden in a really, really good place. And so, we actually detected that using one of these handheld. I believe it was a handheld wand. It's been so long now, but always a concern, because what was he going to do with that key? Or maybe he was going to, eventually pass that key on to some of these killers that we had. I mean, we had guys like Tookie Williams being housed in the same place as him. Guys like Billy Ray Hamilton. So you just never know who's going to get their hands on something like that and get an officer killed.
Right, and I'll go with Greg next. Hey, Greg, when you taking this inmate, let's say it's a male inmate, let's go over the strip process. How are we stripping them? What are the orders we're giving them? How are we making sure they don't have contraband? You there, Greg? Oh, you're muted, Greg.
I didn't get the last question. You were skipping a little bit. Can you hit the last part of your question?
Oh, so Greg, basically, if you could run over the strip process, how do we strip an inmate? What are the orders we're giving them? And guys, we're all adults here, so tell us exactly how a strip is done.
I mean, you're going to start disrobe the inmate, completely disrobe the inmate. We used to have to keep the underwear on before they did anything else. Before they touch their genitals, you want to make sure that you're going through their hair, behind their ears, in their mouth, open their tongue, take a finger, go inside the lips, pull the lips down, pull the lips up, look underneath the tongue, hands up in the air, spread their fingers. Don't let them keep their fingers like this. They can keep things between their fingers, open their fingers, both sides of the hands, underneath the armpits. Have them turn around, have them lift their feet, actually spread their toes so that you can tell there's nothing between their toes. Sometimes they'll hide stuff there. Once that's done, we have them disrobe their underwear. We have them turn and face us. We have them pick up their genitals, each one at a time, back around, tell them to bend at the waist and bend over so we can check the anal cavity, make sure there's nothing left there. And then once we're satisfied, we're going to actually frisk all their clothing. I love the idea that Joe was talking about. I believe it may have been Russ, where you give them separate clothing. I mean, inmates will take the zipper area of a pant and put a little pocket, take a razor blade and open it up and make a pocket and put something in that pocket. So check that area. check that area, check the waistband, put your thumbs inside the waistband. No belts when you're transporting inmate. Don't allow them to wear a belt. See that all the time. There's no way to have belt time. These bigger transports and these prison stuff, they're not going to have anything like that. But again, you want to be diligent about checking, making sure it's your responsibility. The inmate is completely secure, has nothing on their person other than the clothing on their person, because they don't need to have any in possessions, anything. Sometimes I'll even take their wire rim glasses. And some people, remember one of the maybe U.S. Marshals TV or something, he breaks the side of the glasses and he uses that to manipulate the cuff.
Exactly.
Does an inmate need a set of glasses to be, does he have to see where he's going? I'll do that sometimes in a transport. I'll remove their, something small like that. You wouldn't think of it, but if you break that off, that can manipulate your cuffs right there. If it's not needed, the inmate does not have to have it on them.
And you guys want to hear something unique too? A little side note here. So when I was working, multiple times I would see inmates with little holes on their sleeves of their jacket, and I'm wondering like what it is. Why they have these little holes, like as if they were, ripping it out. Well, it turns out they were taking Suboxone, and they were just kind of, because you have to make sure they take it, but they would just kind of quickly just putting it on their coat thing. And what they would do is they rip pieces off and sell it back on the compound to people who would want it. So again, the more restricted an individual be, the more innovative they are. Hey, Joe, before I get to Dave, Joe, what type of paperwork goes with you on a transportation?
Well, it really depends on what the transport's going out for. Seeing how he was going for a medical appointment, we sent him with a travel roster and what they call a temporary travel card, because we know he's going to be returning back to the facility. One thing I do want to note first and foremost is that, given in this particular circumstance, this guy's level of custody, which he was considered a level 1A, which is a step above a maximum custody offender. You go from your minimum custody to your maximum custody. In the state of Texas, it's considered G1 through G5. This guy was considered a 1A, which is, a more restrictive custody than maximum custody, because either he had an assaultive history with staff, other offenders, given his gang relation, or because he had security precautionary designators. But first and foremost, because of his custody, he's going to be stripped in his cell by a supervisor, either a sergeant or a lieutenant, before he even comes out of the cell. So, that's going to be taken care of right off the bat. Now, he's probably going to get stripped again at the back gate prior to getting on this transport bus. But, once he's stripped, just like Greg had mentioned, you spread the fingers, wiggle the fingers, pull the ears forward, lift the tongue, run their fingers through their hair. They're, in Texas now they have beards, so you got to make sure they run their fingers through their beards to make sure they're not hiding any contraband in there. There's a lot of things in play before we even get out to the back gate, to load on the transport bus. Given his restrictive custody, first thing he's going to do is sit in a boss chair, which is, kind of similar, same thing as Megatron that Russ speaks of, to make sure that he's got no foreign metal objects in or around his body anywhere. This, I don't know, the whole situation is kind of baffling to me.
Yeah, and Dave, so guys, we have Priya, we have Prison Rape Elimination Act, and I know the one lady put in the comment here that strips can be humiliating, and okay, it is, obviously, but also inmates tend to be innovative, and they tend to hide things. Trust me, we don't want to go around looking at people, but this is where they tend to hide things, and there are Priya standards when it comes to doing a strip, so we can ensure that we don't violate the inmates' rights while we're doing those strips. So, Dave, can you mention the proper way to do a strip in regards to the Priya?
It gets a little complicated, because if you have someone that's identifying as a woman and you don't know this and they don't tell you, you get yourself into a big jam real quick. What we tend to do is we'll just check the inmate against a list of known how they identify. Sometimes they may have what we call strip search deviation, meaning that a male cannot do the strip search, then we'll have to bring females in to perform that strip search. But there's just so many ways that you can get tripped up. But the big thing you need to remember is if somebody is identifying as female or whatever they identify as, they have an obligation when you ask them to perform a strip search to notify you, this is what I am, this is the strip search deviation I have, these are the special circumstances I have, and you just follow up on it. If they don't tell you that, they don't identify that, then once you figure it out, the first thing you need to do is self-report. Because the second you don't self-report, the inmate will report you, and you end up looking like, hey, you screwed up and you tried to hide it. And that's just caused you a lot of aggravation down the road.
Yep. And guys, just a little added thought to the Priya thing, to complement what Dave is saying. One thing is we do not strip inmates in front of other inmates. I want people to know that. They're not stripped in the open. We're not supposed to do like bulks of them at once. And when it comes to a transgender inmate, some states, not all states, and this is tough because you're going to have people that are playing the system. So a lot of times it's the power of self-declaration over a mental health diagnosis. That's where it gets scary. But when it comes to the strip side of it all, some states allow the inmate to declare their search preference. Now, mind you, if they're in a male facility, if it hasn't been declared, they're going to get stripped by men. If they're in a constant watch scenario, they're going to be watched by men. But once they declare a search preference and it's filtered, then the strip procedure will be done by the gender that they choose to be stripped by. Now, I will say this too. If I'm a female supervisor and I'm overseeing a male strip, I'm not watching the male strip. I'm watching my people strip them. So I don't have to see the male physically being stripped. I just got to watch my officers do it. So just a little food for thought. All right, so guys, I think we can get, this is going to be interesting. Now, I got some pictures of some prison buses that I want to show you guys real quick. I want to show you the size of them. I want to show you the inside. This is where, to me, I could picture someone getting out of the shackles. I get that. But it's very hard for me to picture them getting through the mesh. I'm having trouble picturing that. So, again, I'm very curious to see how that happened. But let me go ahead and show you guys some buses here that I'm getting right from Google. But we'll have our experts here explain them. Okay, so bear with me. So you guys can still see me, right, guys? Right? Or Russ, can you guys see me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can still see you.
All right, so let me just pop a bus right here, and I'll go with Russ first, or you know what? Let's go with Greg first. Then we'll go to Russ. Would you consider this a standard prison bus, Greg?
Not in New York State. They usually use a commercial style, Greyhound style bus, and it's tough to tell without seeing the interior of that bus. You don't know what the security protocols there are. That one right there, that's pretty close to what they used to use in New York State. Chartered bus. But again, not seeing the inside, you don't know what the cage layout is. Are they separated by prisoner? Is it just an open seating in the back? Where are the officers placed inside the bus compared to where the inmates are? How many staff per inmate? How many staff per bus load? Protocols like that. I'm sure there's got to be procedures. Each state, I'm sure, has their own protocols with key security, who holds the keys, who doesn't hold the keys. What do you do if an inmate does need assistance and one officer has to go back if they are not already back there with them? I'm sure each state has their own protocols.
And I want people to know something real quick. Maybe Russ can go first. So now we're looking inside the bus. The windows should be bulletproof, by the way, or bullet resistant. Let's just say that. But look at the seats. They're very hard and uncomfortable. Why is that, Russ?
That's really just the matter of, because otherwise it would be impossible to do any kind of search on it. If you had padded seats, there could be anything, hidden in those. The idea behind those seats is, it's a couple fold, actually. One thing is just, to be able to clean it. But the main thing really is just to make sure there aren't things that, get hidden in there. These guys, if they manage to bring something out, they could hide something for the next busload of inmates. And you know what? It's happened before. So it's as utilitarian as you can possibly make it.
And hey, Russ, who checks the bus out before you guys go out on your transport?
Whoever is staffing the bus does the search.
Right. And then what are the things that you're looking for when you're or when you're checking the bus? Like,
Well, those guys, they do a lot of things actually. They because it's not just about finding potential contraband, but it's about making sure that the bus is in good working order. Making sure once again, that the contraband is there's no contraband on board. Making sure that all of the locking mechanisms on the interior are in good working order. Making sure that all of the equipment that you're taking with you, that you don't have any defective handcuffs, you don't have any defective waist restraints, that you don't have any defective Martin chains. Making sure too that whatever you have in the way of firearms, that they're in good working order. And the list just goes on, because when you're out there by yourself, there may or may not be somebody coming to rescue you. Most of the time, you're really kind of left to your own devices. So that's why they're really strict about what they're doing, and they really have to be on top of their game, because backup usually isn't there. Sometimes if you have some high profile guys or something, you might get a chase car, but I wouldn't count on it.
And guys, maybe later in the week, I do have a show Wednesday where we're going to be discussing the dangers of having an inmate as a pen pal. It's a great story. You guys are going to love it. And live. And then maybe we'll do an episode on housing transgenders. I'll give you the different concerns that has to occur.
That's my favorite subject. So yeah, I'll be down for that one.
All right, so we'll probably do that on a Friday night or something. Hey, someone asked a question about the type of metal that the cages have that separate, I guess, the driver from the inmate. So do you want to hit that up first, Greg?
Should be a wire mesh of some sort. Almost not really like a plate steel, but thick. I can't say cut proof, but it would have to be, could not be easily manipulated. Needs to be strong enough that it just couldn't be pulled apart. You actually have to use some type of device, grinding material or a hacksaw or something like that to get through. You're not just going to bum rush it and go through it. Something like that. It needs to be secure to be able to withstand things like that.
All right, and hey, Joe, Kachera asked a really good question. Do you guys allow them to sit next to each other if there's room to spread them out?
Depending on the custody level, the answer to that is yes. Surprisingly enough, take for example minimum custody offenders, when they're placed on a transport bus, not a van, but a transport bus, they're actually cuffed together and placed on the bus next to each other, wearing just a single set of handcuffs, one on each wrist.
So now, if you had higher profile inmates, again, not high risk, but like just higher profile, would you try to sit them more spaced out?
Absolutely not. The high profile inmate shouldn't be anywhere in the same vicinity as your minimum custody or even your medium custody. Some of the chain buses have what they call a cage within a cage for those high profile offenders. In this instance, whether or not he was inside one of those, we don't know. We haven't heard quite the details yet. But they should never, when somebody of that status is getting on a transport bus, generally they're either placed on the bus first or they're placed on the bus very last. Preferably first. Sometimes that's not possible because you got a chain bus that's already stopped in Texas, maybe 5 or 6 other units, and already has a bus load of inmates. So, but short answer is, minimum custody, yes, they sit next to each other. As far as high profile inmates, no, they shouldn't be anywhere in the same vicinity. They should be at the rear of the bus, in the cage within a cage.
And I'll go with Dave on this one. Dave, what's the usual? So for standard trip, how many? What's the amount of staffing that you need to safely go from point A to point B?
It depends on your transport. If in my case, if I'm taking someone to court, I try to do a 3-man team, and then we rotate through the court through the day. We keep 2 people in there, keep the third guy moving through the courthouse, checking on the vehicles. If you have other inmates, you may run 4 people, so you have an escort team uh, to escort inmates from the transport vehicle up to the courtroom and so forth. It could really vary. Doctor's appointment, depending on the security level, it's either going to be a 2-man team or a 3-man team. And in which case, you're going to have 2 people in the room. One should be next to the inmate, ready to handle any requests by the medical staff. The other one should be standing back, watching everything that's going on. And then my third guy should be at the door or outside the door, watching the hallway, and just basically maintaining a secure perimeter for your transport.
You know what's unique too? So if you have a guy that is a potential risk, but for some reason we're transporting all these guys together. So again, the Lopez guy, do you think it would be better for him to be placed at the back of the bus or the front of the bus where he could be properly observed? We'll go with Russ first. Because if you read the comment here from Fiber Floozy, I watched an update today. He was in a cage up front and right behind the mesh door. What's your thoughts? Is that a good spot for him?
I think that's a matter of, what the resources are aboard the bus, depending on the configuration, first of all, and then second of all, if he should have been in an independent cage up there. I'm going to guess, well, I shouldn't guess, but I'm going to say that, if there was some sort of outside help there, he may have had an expectation to be in that particular seat for that particular reason. So, and I don't know that to be the case, but that guy, he's ridden a lot of prison buses is my guess. And whatever his particular, designation was for that, I think they've said 1A or whatever it was. Maybe that would be the position that they would put someone like that. I think we should really ask Joe about that. I think Joe was the one that.
Joe, what's your thoughts on where he was placed on the bus?
Well, generally the chain buses have 2 officers. Of course, you got your driver and what they call a high rider at the very back of the bus. So my suspect is they would probably be towards the back of the bus where the high rider could keep a better eye on them, because the fact that the bus has plexiglass and mesh on it right behind the driver's cage, most of them anyway. I would think that the driver would have a hard time visually actually keeping a visual observation of him, whereas the high rider in the back of the bus could probably keep a better visual on that inmate.
Now, I want to mention something. I don't think this would be the case here, but someone mentioned, I wonder if they were understaffed to only have 2 officers for 16 inmates. I know it may sound like it's a lot to overseeing 6, but there is some level of control. And then we also have resources and tools at our disposal, which includes making sure that the inmates are handcuffed and secure. But do you believe, and we'll go with Greg Carter first, do you believe a 2-officer team with 16 inmates is about average?
It all depends on protocol. I know our large transportation state buses usually had 1 supervisor and 2 officers and a contracted driver. The driver was actually contracted by he was a CDL carrying civilian driving the bus, 2 officers and then 1 sergeant is usually what the protocol was for those. And they would sit side by side because there was so many of them. We'd have 3 or 4 transportation buses on the road at any given moment, almost all week long. They did say that at any given time, there was almost a whole facility worth of inmates on buses across state. It's a large, at one time, New York State had 72,000 inmates. It's a big system. They had 72 separate jails, state prisons, 72 back in the 90s when everything was busy.
Well, let me.
But the protocol was 1 sergeant, 2 officers.
Hey, let me ask, just everybody on the panel here, What's the most amount of inmates that you transported at one time? What do you got, Joe?
That's easy. 46, especially during hurricanes.
Well, how many staffing?
Normally had three per bus during hurricane evacuations. That's most extreme circumstances. Generally you're, just two officers on board.
So would you consider 2 officers and 16 inmates rather routine?
In my state, yes, very routine.
What about you, Dave?
Me would be somewhere between 36 and 40. But what we did is we ran one bus. Then we had some guys that needed to go separate. So we ran another transportation van behind that. And then we transported their property in a third vehicle. So I ran a 6-man team for these 40 inmates. 2 people on a bus, that's standard. I mean, if you go from different state to different state, depending on the structure of the van, the policies you have in place, the protocols you have in place, and if you're running a central transport where you're just constantly moving inmates across the state, you have different places, different sally ports that you stop at, and when you arrive at those sally ports, you're going to have staff there also. So when you're running a sally port exchange, you're moving 40 inmates from one vehicle to another. They're going to be in an enclosed area. Then you're going to have armed officers around that perimeter also.
And I know Russ, do me a favor. I know you want to answer this question. I'm going to run upstairs real quick, but Russ is going to want to answer this because Russ dealt with gangs. He's from San Quentin. And one of the things Russ will tell you is that they are connected inside that prison to the outside world. That's why we have to be very, very particular when we do these trips to make sure that we don't fall into a trap that they already have set, like a medical trip or, whatnot. So, again, Russ, take over on that one. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hurry back. So yeah, I guess this one is from Gary Mayo saying that he retired, and this particular guy, I mean, he could have those cartel connections. He could have some other connections. I think the thing that a lot of people don't realize is how well and how much networking the gang members do. Everyone here on this panel, I'm sure, has stories to tell about how guys, had ordered hits, or about how they had set up to take a note from one prison to another prison to even a third and fourth prison in order to, put people on the bad news list or whatever it is in those particular prisons. It's just endless, the amount of communication that goes on, even when we're on top of it and we're trying to tamp that down. So, this particular one, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. We had guys that, showed up in the California system, like, oh gosh, what was that guy's name? Bat Marquez, right? And Bat Marquez ended up fleeing to Mexico. The FBI ended up going down there and busted him actually in Mexico. Mexico refused to extradite him until he smuggled some dynamite into his cell and blew out all the windows. And, how did he get that in there? Well, networking and, other people, corrupt, bringing that stuff into him. And this guy, he was part of the whole Mexican mafia system, and he was bringing in, 55-gallon drums of black tar heroin like it was nothing, wanted in, I think, 17 murders. So never put that past him. Anthony, yes. I have to go, but I had to come and have part of the fun for myself here. So we'll see you guys. It was nice meeting Greg Carter. I know David Still. I know Joe Pomponio. So you guys take care, and thanks for helping Anthony out.
Oh, thank you, Russ.
All right.
Hey,
Good talking with you, Russ.
So let me ask you a question. So in Georgia, we had an incident, guys. If you get a chance, a few years back, where 2 officers' lives were taken. Sad to say. And when we look at these prison transports and we see something that has gone wrong, and I'll start with Joe first, and then we'll work our way to David and Greg. Do you first think that the inmate was really innovative in this and wow, you got to give them some credit for what they've done? Or do you think that it's complacent staff?
Honestly, a little bit of both. I think there were some complacency issues, definitely some shortcuts, without a doubt. And as short staffing as we are, or as they are, there's no doubt in my mind that there was a shortcut taken, that led to this incident happening. And like Russ said, I mean, inmates on our best day, they have a better networking system than we'll ever have. Inmate.com is the bomb between telephones, tablets, family members. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that we've gotten people in on the chain and hadn't even gotten them through the classification process yet, and we're already doing an offender protection investigation because somebody has already called their family member who's looked them up, and next thing we know, we're he's being threatened before he even gets a housing assignment because he's a registered sex offender. Yep. They know this before we do. Right. We haven't even gotten the guy through the classification process yet. And I'm already doing an offender protection investigation on something I know nothing the hell about until I actually do the investigation. So, networking, they got one hell of a network system. There is no doubt.
And as you can say, obviously we're not surprised they hasn't been caught yet because of that network system, especially if he had affiliation with the cartel. Hey, Greg, what's your thoughts on that? Do you first think complacency, or do you think that the inmate was extremely innovative?
It could be a combination of both. I mean, you never circumvent security for convenience, and that's not portrayed enough. Complacency kills. You can say it all you want. You can do all the training all you want, but when you get relaxed in your system and you get used to doing your normal protocol, never having any problems, you let your guard down, you're not aware of your surroundings. I mean, even when you're on a transport, I don't care if you got one guy or 3 guys or 10 guys, you should always be looking around. Are there cars coming into the area? Are there suspicious people? Is this car acting funny around me? Going back to the outside trip, a medical appointment, we always tell the doctor or nurse before they even start the protocol, one officer on the outside, when they come into the room before they get there, if we have to reschedule another appointment for the inmate, please do not do it in the presence of the inmate. Tell us separately so the inmate does not know. That's a big thing. The inmate should not have any prior knowledge of any medical outside trip, as little as possible. Now, if he's got a regular thing where he's going through a cancer treatment or something like that, that's a little bit different. Court procedures, they're different. They know their court dates, so they're going to have that. So again, you need to be diligent and just be aware of your surroundings and make sure you're following your protocols. Don't rest on your laurels. Complacency is probably the thing that an officer goes through when he has an incident like that. It's a lot of it.
Hey, Joe, Spencer Hall says Texas does not put foot shackles on inmates on prison transports. Is that true?
On chain buses, 80% of the time, I would say yes, that's probably true. If they go out by van and not a bus where he's just a single inmate, they don't leave that back gate unless they're shackled in a blue box and with leg irons and stuff on. If that's happening, then yeah, there's some severe complacency going on at that facility. But as far as chain buses, unless they're just a high profile, high restrictive offender, no, they're not placed in leg shackles while they're on the bus.
And can you explain what chain bus is?
Okay, a chain bus is something that the state uses for mass transports, either going, like our state has 3 hospitals in the state that handle offenders. We have one in Galveston, which is actually called Hospital Galveston, which is actually a secured unit, one of our facilities. If they're going on a mass transport, either to a medical facility for a medical appointment, or they're coming from diagnostic and being transferred to either a transfer facility or their permanent unit of assignment, which could be anywhere in the state, any multiple number of, that is what chain buses are normally utilized for. The vans are utilized for one-on-one transports for maybe urgent medical or emergency medical, one that needs to go to a local ER or one that needs to go to a local facility pretty quick that can't wait for, scheduling for the next morning where they can actually hit a chain bus to go to a facility or go to a medical facility. But our chain buses are, just your traditional Bluebird buses. Like I said, that they sit no more than 46 to a bus, and they're used for mass transports to and from, different facilities. And a majority of the time on those buses, they are not wearing, like I said, they're not wearing blue boxes, they're not wearing shackles, leg restraints, belly belt. They're generally cuffed to each other and sat in a seat side by side.
All right, so this is.
Hey, Anthony, can I comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
At least in New York State, it doesn't matter what they're going out on. I don't care if it's a mass transit bus, a Greyhound style bus, a van, a pickup truck. It doesn't matter. We had like where I worked, a max jail and a medium across the street. We would transfer back and forth down the state bus. We would take them out of each one. I don't care if it's a minimum security, maximum security, to a medium security. Everybody went the same protocol. Happened every black box, waist chain, padlocks, leg irons. It was done that way. So it was always the same. The protocol was the same no matter when an inmate left outside that facility. If they went outside the facility, any type of transport, they all had the black box. They all had cuffs, double locked, locks, and waist chains. Every single one, no matter what the scenario was, every single one was done that way.
Yeah, guys, as you can see, each state will have its different protocols. Each county will. I mean, it all depends.
Correct.
But again, universal precaution for me would be, the shackles and everything, obviously. Now, guys, I'm gonna see if people want to see that weapon retention video. So, but before we get to that, I want to talk about that moment. So, guys, if you're not familiar with what weapon retention means, it's basically the officer's ability to secure that weapon to stop somebody from grabbing that weapon. I have a video from the same instructors that did the handcuffs. If you're interested in seeing that, I'll show you that. But I want to get to this one part here as we move forward. So I'll start with Dave first. Dave, how time consuming would it be for an inmate to cut through a mesh gate?
If it's a gate I'm familiar with, that's usually a rolled stainless steel. And just to cut through it literally could probably about 45 minutes to do something like that. Now, if you're using the same vehicle over and over again, and these inmates are watching you and they know, hey, he's not checking this, he's not checking that. You run somebody on the same bus 3 or 4 times, they get in that cage, they're through it in 5 minutes.
I've seen, this is the scary thing, guys. Now, I'm not saying this is the case, guys. Let me just separate something real quick here. This is not the case, okay? But hear me out, because I've heard of this before. But sometimes, remember, the driver's got to be focused. They're looking at the road. They can't look at the inmates. If my partner falls asleep, that's the eye. And to me, that's the first thing that's the first thing I always think of, because I think those were some of the concerns that happened in the past where the driver's never going to look backwards. Plus, I don't think they can. But the person here does. If that person falls asleep, it's carte blanche. Whatever you want to do, you can make it happen. I mean, and that's one of the things that I think of automatically. But Card, what was your thoughts on that, Greg, when I said that? Has that happened in the past?
You better not do that in New York State. You won't have a job very long. No, the passenger officer's job is observing of the inmate. The driver drives and pays attention for distractions, any type of irregular movement of vehicles or pedestrians or anything like that. Coming to a stop sign or coming in traffic, leaving equal distance between you and the car in front of you so you can have a good escape plan. Don't get boxed in, things like that. That's the driver's job. The passenger officer's job is to observe the inmate. That is your job. That's why you place the inmate in a good position so that officer can see them. we use a pickup truck style transport at my local sheriff's office. When I go with a partner, the inmate is placed behind me. Of course, there's a cage petition with the cage fence and everything like that. The passenger has a better view of looking at that inmate than the driver, because the driver's, looking at what he's trying to do driving down the road. The passenger officer job is to observe the inmate. That's why they're paid. That's your job.
Joe, when you thought about this, was that something that came into your mind, that could the other person have been kind of not looking at the inmates, let's just say it that way, for someone to be able to do that? I mean, how are you watching them? They're able to do that.
Yeah, I'm still conflicted about that, because the mesh that's behind the officer. Let me see if I can how close I can describe it. It's kind of like a rod iron fencing, grill style, almost something like you would see on a big barbecue pit.
Yep.
A wrought iron style mesh that's behind you. I know back in the days they used to cut through it in no time with dental floss and tooth powder, and that was the reason why they took the dental floss out of the penitentiary. It was still, I mean, number one, the inmate came out of his restraints, which took him a little bit of time. Number two, he made it up to the front of the bus behind the driver and managed to somehow cut through the door. That took some time. Now granted, the length of this bus trip was probably about 2.5 hour drive from the unit they departed, where they had just picked that inmate up, to where their destination was supposed to be. That would take some time. So either way it goes, somebody was way unobservant in their duties, whether it's the high rider in the back or the driver in the front. And I mean, this mesh cage is literally as close to me as this window behind me is. That's how close it is to the driver. How, and I'm just going to say it outright, how in the hell do you not know that somebody is cutting on this thing that is sitting literally 12 to 16 inches behind you?
Yep.
And he wasn't just on site. He wasn't the only inmate they would transport. I think there was like 15 or 16 of them. And then also, just a side question, we have someone from Dubai. Hello, welcome. To us, I guess. I don't know. Welcome. And then I want to answer something from Pat. That's a little off topic. Do prisons use drones to watch yards? Not that I know of. And I'm pretty sure I don't know any facility that does. Hey, Dave had a question. Dave Still, right here. He wanted to circle back and talk about supervision of transport staff. What do you mean by that, Dave?
Well, like we said, we tend to use the same people over and over and over again. Prisons tend to create on a 5 and 2 shift transport officers, and by using those same guys over and over again, to pick one of these guys, they need to be able to work absent direct supervision a lot. But something that does happen is complacency. If they start to know the inmates they're dealing with, they know the routes they know all the routes to all the normal places that they go. And sometimes you just need a new supervisor to come in and shake things up. Go to the armory with them and say, okay, what equipment are you drawing? Are you drawing OC? Are you drawing a cuff key? Are you drawing your weapon? Something I ask my guys all the time. Does a carpenter go to work without a saw? No, he doesn't. Does a carpenter go to work without a hammer? No. Why in the world would you want to go to work without your tools? Have all your tools with you all the time, because you never know when you're going to need them. The other thing is sometimes in the case of transport buses, central transportations, they tend to take the same routes over and over and over again. They don't vary those routes. We talk about intel. We talk about networking. Inmates go, hey, I'm going from point A to point B. I'm going to be going next Wednesday. They leave the institution at 5:30 a.m. They will be at this institution by 8. They'll be at this institution by 2. We need to vary the times and the routes whenever we're taking these large transportations around. And the other thing is And this is something I've seen several times. When the transport, I don't know, the transport space on a vehicle is closed, it should never, under any circumstance, be opened until you're someplace secure. If an inmate's doing something on the side of the road or doing something going down the road, you don't pull over and open it and say, "Hey, what's going on, guys?" You just look at him and say, "You better hold on, son, because guess what? We're about 30 minutes away from the next stop. If you're going to do that, there ain't nothing I can do for you because I'm not opening this door under any circumstance." But it comes to down to we trust these officers to do this job day in and day out. We trust them to work without direct supervision, and sometimes they develop bad habits. And if we don't check on those bad habits and remind them, "Hey, this is what we're supposed to do," then we have things like somebody takes their duty belt off while they're driving down the road and sits it beside them while they're driving the bus. And inmates see this. Inmates know this. They know inmate so and so knows officer so and so is going to be on this transport. I know his habits. This is going to be my opportunity.
Hey,
that's over familiarity with an inmate or the officer. Over familiarity with trips. I mean, we had itineraries we had to follow. We had protocols. We actually had transport routes we had to follow. It was part of our itinerary. And part of that was if there was a problem and they couldn't get in touch with us, they would know the route we took so they could hopefully come rescue, save, whatever, which I understand. But I'm with Dave. It should be varied because if the inmate is on a regular, like a cancer treatment or a regular, some type of medical thing where he's on a medical trip once a week, twice a week, whatever, going to the same hospital, that's easy for him to get word out to somebody else. Hey, we leave at this time. We always take this route. We're going by this place at this time. It's an easy manipulated thing that can happen for sure.
Someone said it was an old ass piece of junk
But
bust.
you see it all the.
Oh, sorry. Someone said that the engine.
But you see this.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No. You know what it is, Dave?
I was going to say.
Okay.
I was going to say, you see this all the time in road camp. You see it with all road camps. They work in the same spot for a week or two. They get word to somebody, "Hey, I'm going to be working here." And the next thing you know, you're walking a ditch line and you find a big old bag of drugs for an inmate to pick up and take back to a road camp.
Yep.
Hey, so I want to, because we definitely have a lot of questions here that could be for another topic. So I want to kind of stay focused on here. So real quick, obviously it makes it through the mesh gate. Now the support officer and the driver are both in some shit now. The driver, to be honest with you, obviously they can't fight. They can't. They got to pay attention to the what they're doing, and then you have the partner. So this is where we want to discuss the weapon retention part. Now they said he had a knife. I mean, what's the likelihood that the knife was already placed on the bus, as opposed to him smuggling that? I mean, but they also don't tell you what the knife is made of. By the way, the knife could have been a plastic shiv. I mean, we don't know what the knife was made of. I mean, the knife doesn't always have to be metal. So, if you're not really checking these guys, plastic shiv's not going to go off in the metal detector. But hypothetically, what are other ways that knife could have found its way onto that bus to get into that inmate's hands? I'll go with Joe first.
Complacency, not doing a proper strip search. Number one and foremost, not doing a proper strip search. Complacency. Hey man, we're in a hurry. This guy's a level 3 seg or level 1 seg. I got to shut the hallways down because I can't have no offender traffic going on out here. While this guy's in the hallway, we got to hurry up and get him to the bag gate and get him on the bus so I can go back to my chow hall. Complacency. I mean, plain and simple. We don't know if he had it. We don't know if it was complacency during the strip search. We don't know if this thing was already on the bus. We don't know. There's so many unknowns about this incident that and until the thorough, complete investigation is done, I don't think we can guesstimate and kick it around all day long. But no matter how you slice it, dice it, cut it, ginsu it, whatever, it's complacency, taking a shortcut. Somebody took a shortcut.
All right, now I know Dave has to go. Dave, you have any closing thoughts before you go? Because I want to show that weapons retention video, and then we could probably start rounding it off as well.
Every issue I've ever seen with the transportation came from Somebody didn't follow policy. Somebody didn't follow procedure. And that 99% of the time, that's the issue. We don't do our job.
Yep.
If we do our job, 99% of the problems are taken care of before we even leave the institution.
All right. So Dave, thank you for coming. I know it was kind of last moment. I appreciate it. Hope we're definitely going to have you on again. But thank you for taking your time. Dave is a professional leader in corrections. So, and he's making his difference every day. My heart goes to you, Dave. Thank you for all you do.
Nice talking to you,
You all
Dave.
have a good night.
Great insight.
All right. So
Have a good one, Dave.
what I'm going to do real quick, guys, people do want to see the weapons retention video. I thought maybe real quick, just before we show them, Greg, just bear with me. Can you explain exactly what weapons retention means to you?
If you're ever in an incident where somebody is possibly out of the restraints or even in their restraints, don't think that just because an inmate's in restraints, they can't try to get your weapon. They will. They can. Some of these inmates are in chains and cuffs anytime they come out of their cell. I've seen an inmate try to assault me in full restraints. I mean, hand, leg, waist chain, and a lead chain from the waist chain down to the ankles. He tried to jump up and drop kick me. These inmates know how to manipulate and work in these things and can try to attack you. Weapons retention, the number one reason why there's no firearms allowed inside a prison is because the inmates could possibly get that. You can't have that threat. You can't have that security breach. So you have to be able to know how to control the weapon. I mean, as simple as, and I'm sure you're going to see this on the video, as simple as taking the bottom of the holster and picking it up so that the butt of the weapon has to go into your hip and it can't come out of the holster. That's one of the simplest ways. But you're going to see, I'm sure the video is going to show a lot of that. But you have to be, put yourself between the weapon and the inmate. Never put the weapon on the side of the inmate when you're escorting them. If you are the officer with the weapon, some places have a policy. The person escorting the inmate is not the armed weapon or the not armed officer. Only an unarmed officer escorts the inmate. That's possible too. But always keep the weapon outside. Keep the weapon on one side and then your body, then the inmate. Keep your body between the inmate and your weapon. You'd be surprised how many people do not follow that protocol. See it all the time. Again, complacency, not thinking of the worst case scenario. Think of the worst case scenario, work your way back. That's the way I look at everything. Plan on the worst thing that can happen and work your way back.
It's good that you say that because I actually have a what if video where basically you got to play those what ifs in your head. Because again, if you don't, by the way, you can work at a facility that's a little uneventful. And if you're not playing those games, you're going to start getting complacent. All right. So here we go. This is going to be a video on weapon retention. So let's do it. All right, give me a second. I'm still figuring this out. Is this one? Okay, here it comes.
So they can save the lives of the inmates, themselves, and the public. Enjoy the video.
Hi, I'm Mike Wolford from Just Follow the Force. I'm here with Andre Tosato from Defensive Fit, and we're going to go over some weapons retention, basically in the holster today, either standing on the ground, and we're going to show you some tips to save your life. Most law enforcement officers bring a gun to the gunfight, so maybe you don't handle a gun very often, work in a correctional setting. But when you exit the institution, you should have a firearm on your side, therefore to protect yourself and to protect the public, and you don't want that firearm used against you. So today we're going to talk about weapon retention. There's a couple different types of retention holsters. When it comes to retention, there's two things that are going to keep you safe. One is going to be your equipment. Two is yourself and your skills. So right now we're going to talk about the first thing is going to be your equipment. So right here I have what we call an open top or zero level retention holster. This is not fit for duty use. As a fact, a paddle holster should never be fit for duty use. If it's on your body and simply someone starts to pull it, it will just snap. It's just plastic out of the Kydex holster. So that's not what you want to have for duty use. If you're going to and from work, I never suggest having a holster that has zero retention because anyone can just come right behind you and pull your gun out of the holster. So right off the bat, never have a zero retention holster or an open top Kydex holster. This is more for concealed carry, not for open duty use. Next we're going to look at here, this is going to be a level 1 retention holster. It has a snap on it, and then you can draw the holster out. Now, where did these levels come from? In the 1970s, Bill Rogers, FBI agent and an inventor of several different firearms, things that you could use to protect yourself, and in the training industry, kind of developed the retention system. And the retention system, now, when you look at a holster, it might say level 1, level 2, level 3 retention, all the way up to level 5 retention. But what happens is that's not regulated in any type of way. So just because it says level 2, level 3, doesn't mean you don't check your equipment, make sure it is what it says it is. There's no federal standard that says this is a level 2 and it gets a stamp of approval. So anyone can advertise whatever level of retention that is. So a lot of people think of it as, well, this has a snap on it, therefore it's a level 1 retention. Well, that's partly true. So the test that Bill Rogers did, which we're going to do today, basically is once you put a holster on and the person's going to see if they could rip it out of the holster for 5 seconds. If it remains in the holster for 5 seconds, that means it's a level 1. Once you defeat another locking mechanism and then you decide to rip it out for another 5 seconds, well, that's a level 2, all the way up the chain. So that's what we're going to do here today is test the retention of a holster from someone that doesn't know how to operate a holster. Right, Andre? Do you know how to operate any of these holsters?
I'm not that familiar with them.
He's not that familiar with it. And the adversary on the street would not be that familiar with them either. All right, so what we're going to demonstrate now is going to be the level 1 retention holster. So what that means is there's 1 retention holding this in. So an average person, one thing, part of the equipment you also want to have is a solid belt. And where you place your keepers on your belt is also imperative. So you want to have 1 in the front and 1 in the rear of the gun. Because what happens is during a struggle, your gun may shift and it may not be there when you need to grab it. So you want to make sure it's stable in its place and your belt fits nice and tight. So now we're going to give 5 seconds and Andre is going to attempt to pull this gun out of my holster. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to fight him. He's just going to, without snapping off the snap. Ready, sir?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Very good. Thank you. Now, I take off that retention device. Go ahead, sir. Another 5 seconds. 1, 2. That's it. So with a level 1 retention, if that snap goes, there's nothing else holding your firearm in but you. And that's what we're going to talk about, the skills to keep that in your holster. All right, so now what we're going to cover a level 3 retention holster, which for duty use, you should have a minimum of a level 3 retention holster that involves more than 1 locking device. Usually it's going to be thumb brake, a hood strap, and then some type of maneuver, either pulling straight up or something inside is going to hold the gun in place. Therefore, if it's jerked forward or back, it's not going to come out of the holster. So we're going to do the same test, 5 seconds each, and we're going to test our holster to make sure it's effective. So right now I have both locks engaged. Andre, go ahead, sir. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. Now think about that. That's a lot of time. 5 seconds is a lot of time for me to do what? Damage to the person that's trying to rip my gun in the holster. And what kind of force could I use in this situation? This is a deadly force scenario that I could possibly use deadly force, because if a person is grabbing a gun in my holster, out of his own waistband, or on the ground, what is he still doing? Grabbing a gun. Doesn't matter if it's in my waist. Doesn't matter if it's in the suspect's waist. Doesn't matter if it's on the ground or a table. He's grabbing a gun. And right here, this is a temporary locking device. So that means this is a deadly force scenario, even though it's not out of the holster, even though it's not pointed at me, because any minute, or I should say any second or quarter of a second, it may very well be. So now I take off 1 lock. Go ahead, sir. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. There you go. Another lock. Go ahead, sir. 1001, 1002. Okay. So 2 seconds, because he pulled it out in the correct angle. But if he pulls forward, it shouldn't come directly out like you would a zero top. If it pulls backwards, it shouldn't come out directly out. It's going to buy you some time. And that's the whole idea. Even if both locks are defeated, it should buy you still 2 seconds of time. And 2 seconds, although it may not seem like it, in a fight is an eternity. I always say is 30 minutes of exercise, working out, will never be a 1-minute fight. And that's what you have to understand, is that all this holster's doing is buying you time to fight back. And the more time you wait on not fighting back and worrying about trying to keep this gun in the holster, because that's 15 seconds of running elbows, punches, kicks. Listen, even the reality of this. Can I use an edged weapon or a knife against this person if I had so in my duty uniform? Of course, it's a deadly force scenario. If I have to pick up a brick off the street and I'm on my back, I can hit the person in the head with it because that's mechanical force. Anything I place into my hand. And that's the whole idea is you have to understand when you're fighting over your gun, it's not a wrestling match with points that you're going to get your hand raised and win a gold medal. It's either you live or you die. And let's face it, 3 things are going to happen. You're going to have to defend yourself, and you may have to utilize deadly force in that scenario, or you're going to be killed. And the second one is if you can create distance without having to use deadly force, well, that's going to be based upon your skill level. But the bottom line is position, what the person's doing, their size, their strength, gender, age, all of these things matter. We talk about disparity of force. What that person, not only what they're doing, but their physical attributes against you. And I always tell people this is one thing people fail to realize is exhaustion. How much time, what is your cardiovascular system like? How many minutes do you have in you that you can fight? Because once you're exhausted, then you're done. You're already immobilized by your own physical attributes. So if you're fighting, you're struggling, a person's grabbing for your gun, and now you're went from 60 to 0, no more gas left in the tank. The guy simply does that, pulls the gun out of your holster and shoots you in the head. And then where are you going to go from there? That's why cardiovascular system is so important. That's why training is so important. That's why your equipment is so much important. How you wear your duty belt's important. It's the small things that matter when it comes to safety. All right, so what we're going to cover now is basic body positioning, reactionary gap. So we went over equipment, and now it is how do we use our equipment to keep ourselves safe? So now we're going to go over basic body positioning. How far should I be between me and whoever I'm dealing with? At least 2 arms distances away. So if Andre puts his arm up and I put my arm up, I want to be at least 2 arm distances away. Anywhere closer to that, I'm at the hardest point of a person's punch. So if he throws a big overhand right, I'm landing it right on my face, right on the button. So I want to have that reactionary gap to block, defend. If he throws a push me, grab me, I have that time to react. As distances get closer, your reaction time gets slower. And that's why we want to keep that gap the best we can. And the second thing we want to do is blade our body. We never want to have our gun side facing anyone we're dealing with. I always want to have our gun side away, and I always want to position myself on a 45-degree angle where the person's right hand is going to be the furthest away from my weapon. And most of the population is right-handed. So 90% of the population being right-handed. So 90% of our training is against a right-handed person because that's more than likely what we're going to face. We're playing the odds right now. So if you have a lot of time and money to invest in training, 10% of your time should be against a left-handed opponent. So now with that being said, we have our body positioning. We have our body bladed, gun side away. We have our 2 arms distance, keeping the reactionary gap long enough, giving me time to react. Now, what we talk about now is what's this person doing? And one of the things we talk about pre-attack indicators is somebody grooming, somebody looking around. Are they looking around for cameras? Are they looking around for what's your backup? What we also talk about is a target glance, meaning when someone's going to reach out and grab something, they don't look the other way and just try to grab it. They're going to focus their eyesight on what they're going to do. And you're going to notice that. You're going to look at their eyes. I tell people, we talked about this last week. Hands, waistband, and face. The face will never lie. So we want to look at facial expressions. Are they grooming? Are they rocking? Are they pacing? Is there clenched jaw? Or are they just simply looking up and away? Are they not making eye contact? All these things should be suspicious of what this person's going to do because they may be saying one thing, but in their mind thinking something else. So partly of a law enforcement officer is to be inquisitive. So you have to wonder, what is this person's motive? What are they really doing? Why are they closing that gap? So it's not only the words they're saying, but the actions that they're taking. So now not only does that help you to keep safe during the incident, but also those are things you should include into your report of why you had to do something, right? So when you utilize force, it's not important what you did as much as it's important as what the person is doing, because all force we're doing is reactive. So once again, if this person looking at my weapon, it's safe to say a quick glance and then an onward to a conversation, because when most people see law enforcement officers, when people see guns, their eyes are focused to them. That's the reality. But now it's 2, 3, 4 times. The guy's looking around. He's clenching his fist. He's taking his strong leg back and suiting the fighting position. Those are things you should be aware about because the fight's about to happen. And a lot of times we watch video and I dissect and I watch and you see people get assaulted. You see law enforcement get guns drawn on them. You see people get blindsided, and you always wonder yourself, how did that happen? And when you ask them, they said, I never saw it coming. But as a third party, we said, how did you not see it coming? And it's not because, once again, we don't look with our eyes, we look with our brain. And if we know what to look for, the small things, the bigger picture seems more clear. So look for the small things, and that's what we have to look at when we talk about body positioning, what the person's doing, what you're doing in relationship to them, and that's what's going to be important. All right, so one other thing we're going to talk about too, we talk about body positioning. We're going to talk about, once again, we blade our body, keeping the gun side away. We're also talking about shielding. Now, shielding is putting any part of your body in between the person that you're dealing with and the firearm. So either one, it could be your elbow. A lot of people just rest their elbow on top of their firearm. Therefore, if he wants to grab it, he's got to go through my arm to grab the firearm. Another one would just be dropping your elbow down, just putting your elbow a little over top. So if he wants to get through, he's got to go through my arm once again. So there's something there, a barrier, which we call a shield, between the person that you're dealing with and your firearm. And let's face it, when some certain situations dictate, nothing like just putting in the holster with your hand and just giving some kind of directive. All right, it's not constructive authority yet because it has to break the plane of the holster. So at this point, if you have to give a directive and you believe someone's going to do a gun grab or someone's going to reach out and grab you or punch you, there's nothing wrong with just pinning it in the holster with your hand and therefore being ready. Because if a fight happens, a deadly force scenario happens, you're going to want to have your gun inside of your hand before that happens. All right, so what we're going to cover now, we're going to show you a technique from the standing and a technique from the ground that's going to be able to protect you from a gun grab. So in the past, what people would do is they would take their hand out, they'd reach in, they'd grab your gun, and they would, both hands, they would pin it in the holster, and they would try to turn their body away and maybe rip the hand off your gun. But let's be honest, the person's not just going to be grabbing your gun with his extended arm and leaving it out there. So you put both of your hands and unable to defend yourself to pin it in this level 3 retention holster, which has at least 10 seconds worth of him trying to grab it out and use it against me. So the 10 seconds that he's using to try to grab this gun out, I usually at least one hand grabbing onto it, or in some cases, it's going to be no hands because I'm going to be entirely offensive, depending on what that person's doing to me. But before he grabs my gun, not like a mummy, just reaches his hand out and walking towards me, he's going to punch me and grab my gun. He's going to push me and grab my gun. We might be in some kind of standing wrestling match, and he might attempt to grab my gun, or he throws me on the ground and now starts to punch me, kick me, and do whatever, and then all of a sudden notices, oh, look, there's a gun on the hip. I didn't plan on grabbing a gun, but now I'm going to because that's just what I'm going to do in the heat of the moment type of thing. So very rarely does a guy just walk up to you surreptitiously, look at your gun, and then all of a sudden try to reach with both hands and grab it. That doesn't really make a lot of sense in the real world. So what we're going to show you today is going to be off of a strong hand punch. You're going to block, and then from there, we're going to retain our weapon. All right, so. All right, so what's going to happen here, he's going to punch, and this time it's going to be a little more dynamic. He's going to punch, and he's just going to rush forward. What I want to do is I want to block that punch, first of all, just like I'm combing the back of my hair here, blocking the soft tissue of my face, my jawline, my temple, the back of my head, protecting from the strong side punch. And then I want to take that hand up, and I want to put a frame, basically from shoulder going across, a barrier preventing him to get any closer. And at the same time, I'm going to secure my gun in the holster because he's obviously punching, rushing, and grabbing all at the same time. So it's not like a step process where the guy punches, waits, then grabs my gun. No, it's bang, and then the fight's going to be on. All right, so now he's going to go for it. This is not rehearsed here, so Andre doesn't really know, but I want Andre to go for it. He may get hurt in the process, but that's part of training.
It's all good.
All right, so go ahead. So some of the key things you want to do is obviously block, pin the gun in the holster by grabbing the gun if he grabs a hold of it. If he doesn't grab a hold of it yet, if he grabs a hold of it, I simply grab the wrist. One of the key things we want to work about here is getting our hips back. So it'll be the same thing if he was going to tackle me and I was going to do a sprawl. Basically, my knees bend and my hips go back. And while my hand is here and I got this frame, all I'm doing is driving my hips back and pushing his hand to the ground. And that's going to create the distance. Now, from there, could I get offline, draw to a weapons retention position, and give commands? Of course I could. Now, What if now, the question I always get in this is, what if the guy continues to walk forward? Can you utilize deadly force? Well, the answer is this. When he's walking forward, I'm giving commands, I'm backing up, he's still coming forward. And now he reaches out and he grabs my gun. From this position, what is he doing? Think to yourself. We talked about this earlier. He's grabbing a gun. Period. Just because it's in my hand, is it permanently in my hand? Or just like he tried to grab it out of my holster, can he grab it out of my hand? Yes. And that's the thing. Whether it's in his waistband, in my waistband, on the floor, on the counter, in my hand, this is a temporary position. Once I give up this position, I am now going to be killed because I have no recourse when he grabs the gun out of my hand. I have not a larger deadly force option. I can't pull a bazooka out of my backpack. All right. So when he grabs his gun out of my hand, that's when now I have to stop that at all costs, because if he grabs my gun, I will die. And that's what we talk about is the importance of weapon retention is to stop that before it happens. And what happens is, would a reasonable person stop with a gun drawn on him? Yes, a reasonable person would stop. But in this case, is the person that you're going against reasonable? No, they're not being reasonable, because anybody with a gun drawn would simply comply. But for whatever reason, this person's not complying. So in their mind, what you have to think that they're thinking, or know that they're thinking, is that they don't respect you with the ability to defend yourself, and they don't respect the gun. And if they don't respect the gun, what do you think is going to happen when that reactionary gap is closed? So the gaps doesn't get closed. He's still coming. And now he grabs the gun and starts wailing me. What's supposed to happen here? He's unarmed. He has no weapons. But what happens? How many punches can you take in the face? 1, 2, 3. We don't know. So you cannot risk taking punches, getting thrown down, being mounted, and then waiting until you're dead to defend yourself. All right, so one more time, getting back into the technique. Nice and slow. This time he's going to big overhand, block. He goes to grab the gun. I frame, I grab his wrist. Let's turn around here. I grab the wrist, I frame off from shoulder to hip, and I drive my hips back as I push his hand down. And from here, I create distance. And once you're creating distance, never go directly backwards, because if you wanted to backpedal, which I don't recommend, he could always move faster forward than I can go backwards. So anytime you break contact, you always want to step onto a 45-degree angle and never go linear, because he can always travel a lot faster going forward than I can backwards. So anytime we break contact, you want to go linear. That's basically on a 45-degree angle, left or right, getting off of, we'll say, the fatal X. All right, X marks the spot. I want to get off that spot. All right, so one more time, he does the big overhand. I block. He goes, if I stop his hand before it gets there, it's a bonus. I frame on the neck. I break contact, and I draw to a weapons or potential position. Why don't I draw my gun out here? Because now I'm giving it. Anytime the person can grab your gun, you want it back here. All right? Now, look at my hand. Sometimes you don't want to shoot your own hand either. So even if in this position, you angle down on a 45-degree angle, and now I have no risk of shooting my hand this way. And even now, if I wanted to block or fend, or even just keep my hand tight, and even come to a two-handed, high ready, compressed ready position, even from here, if you want to use two hands, or one to even further, because let's face it, in the real world, he might still be throwing punches. All right, so it could be high compressed ready, a fending position, a blocking position, and just giving commands from here. Stop, get back. Don't move, right? Clear, concise instructions, what you want this person to do. And then from there, obviously, if the person keeps on coming, we talked about is deadly force scenario exists because the person now is grabbing for a gun. Doesn't matter where it's at. A gun is being grabbed. So you can't wait for the guy to grab a gun and then you have nothing to defend yourself. All right, so what we're going to talk about now is another option is you block the punch, or maybe the punch hits you. You get knocked down, the person takes you down, and now they end up in between your legs in the guard position. So the guard position is a position from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that you're going to you may find yourself into after a double leg takedown, or if the person just follows you down after a crushing blow. So the first thing whenever you're falling down is, although you maybe get hit and not think about it, is tuck your chin. The number one thing is tuck your chin, tuck your elbows in, make sure you're not hitting your head on the concrete, because that will be the second fatal error that'll happen, besides the first one being the punch in your head, and if not blocking that. All right, so what's going to happen is you're just going to punch, tackle, and go for a takedown. And from here, now we land in this position here. He's smothering, he's right on top of me. Now he's starting to reach for the guns. I mean, he may stand up first or sit up and start to punch and just start. So from here, you have to start to defend yourself. And then from there, maybe as I defend myself, he just decides, hey, look, there's a gun there. Let me reach for it. All right. So as he's crashing down, I'm going to secure the wrist, grab the guy's head, pull him down and away. From here, reach over and grab my own wrist. As I do that, I'm going to shoot my hips out and then keep this leg on the back. And I'm going to bring his wrist up to the high part of his back and then drop my elbow down. And that's going to be a tap. Now, in the street, there's no tap out. Let's face it. This could be a compliance position, but what kind of a situation are we in when the guy's grabbing my gun? A deadly force scenario. So what I may have to do is simply take his arm from here and then put it over here. All right, because I have to end the fight as quickly as possible, because this is a deadly force scenario. If I'm on my back, if a bad guy's on top of me, if I don't do anything, he's going to pound me out into the ground and I'll have no recourse. So serious bodily injury is happening to me. Death may be happening to me if he grabs my gun out of the holster. So if the person doesn't start to comply from this position, if he doesn't start to comply, I may have to injure this person so he can't grab my gun anymore. And deadly force is serious bodily harm or death. So we only begin to a compliance position. But once again, if the person's grabbing my gun, if he's not complying, well, then we have to escalate force. And that would be obviously injuring the arm. That's not our primary, but you have to have it into your head. Just like the first day on the interview process, they ask you, can you take a human life? Can you use deadly force? And everybody answers yes. But I don't think and I think most people think that everyone's prepared to do that, or they want to do that, or some other crazy notion they have in their head. Nobody wants to ever take a human life. Nobody ever wants to take somebody's arm and break it so they can't use it anymore. But the bottom line is this: what is this person doing to the officer that is making them do what they have to do to survive? And that's what people keep on failing to forget. They think that people put on the uniform and they just want to go out there and arbitrarily use force on people. They want to get a lawsuit. They want to be sued. I don't know of anybody that wants to be sued. I do know of every single person as a law enforcement officer, as a human being, don't want to be killed for doing their job. And that's what we have to understand is we are defending our life when it comes to a gun grab. Because if we don't defend the gun and we lose our weapon, we lose our life. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you get some tips.
That was just related to the weapons retention part of it all, so you guys get an understanding of what the officer was trying to do. And if the gun did go off, the officer would have been justified in taking that inmate's life. It's funny because, sometimes the public may twist it a little bit. But having said that, once you go for that person's gun, it's game on. I guess we can kind of start to wrap it up. Guys, don't forget, I'll do my closing at the end. So, Greg, first off, this was great meeting you, Greg. It's the first time. I'm sure you're going to come on again, I hope.
Yes,
but Greg,
thanks for having me.
I'm honored. Do you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Don't become complacent. Just stay diligent. Stay aware of your surroundings. An inmate is an inmate is an inmate. Don't let them manipulate you. We've seen a lot of that. I mean, look at the female deputy that was taken in Alabama. I mean, she fell into a love trap with this guy. And number 2 in charge, very experienced officer of the year. Inmates are manipulative. They will do anything they can. They've got 24 hours to get over on you. You've got 8, 10, or 12 hours to catch them, whatever your shift is. They always have the advantage. Make sure you're staying diligent so that they can't take advantage of that. Be safe. Always be aware of your surroundings.
It's great advice, Greg. Thanks. I'm sure I'll have you on again. I have to go out to California, but when I come back, we're going to be doing some more shows. I love the live stuff. I love the interaction. Hey, Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Sure. First off, Greg, it was good to meet you. hopefully get to do this again soon. I think it was a great conversation. My advice to everybody, kind of echoes Greg's. Don't let complacency get you. 80% of communication is nonverbal. If an inmate's acting nervous, there's a reason for it. So, kind of let your spidey senses kind of tune in on that and be aware of your surroundings. Don't take shortcuts. It doesn't matter how short you are, folks. You gotta think of the long-term outcome. And I'm sure there's somebody somewhere, probably having an oh shit moment right now because of what transpired. So, don't take the shortcuts, folks, because at some point it's going to catch up with you, and it's not going to be a good thing. Most of all, be safe. Watch out for each other, because basically we are all that we have. So we need to stay unified in that process and think about everybody else's safety and not just your own.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Greg. I mean, obviously I couldn't have done this without you guys, Russ and Dave as well. I'm going to let you guys go. People see the pat frisk. I'm not going to bore you guys with that. So I'm going to go ahead and let them go, and then I'm going to play the pat. Let you guys go, and then I'm going to play the pat frisk for them so they can see another part of what we would be doing before we even put the inmate into the shackles and all the other stuff. So, all right, guys, I'm going to say goodbye to you, and guys, I'm going to get the video. So stand by. Let me just say goodbye to our guest. All right, guys, so bear with me. I'm going to get the video now. Hold on. So this is going to be the same instructors, and they're going to show you how a pat frisk should be done. And guys, the pat frisk will be done way before we start to shackle the inmate, of course. So bear with me 1 second. I'm getting the video now. I like this video. It's good. Now, mind you, guys, this pat frisk is for a compliant inmate. The video is 12 minutes. The video is going to be 12 minutes long. If that's okay, then I'll play it. So if you guys are okay for 12 minutes, I'll show you exactly how we pat frisk a compliant inmate. And again, if we're getting ready to do a transport, we would be doing this before we start to shackle them. Okay, so if I can get 5 pat frisks, we're good to go. I'm going to play it right off the bat. Anthony made it through my first week. What we do is nuts. Hey, welcome to the family, AK. That's good stuff, man. Not a lot of people even make it through a second, and you made it through a whole week. I'm almost at 20 years. Yeah. And guys, don't forget Wednesday, we're going to have me, Connie, and Sharon Brooks on. She's going to talk about the dangers of having an inmate pen pal. Guys, what an interesting story that turns out to be. And she's going to talk about conjugal visits. She's going to tell you how conjugal visits work out. So it's not what's trending in the news, but it's still very informative. Okay, guys, I got enough. So enough of me talking. Here's the pat frisk video. So stand by. So remember, guys, this is a compliant inmate. It's an unsecured inmate. They're compliant. Here we go.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk, and today I am at Marshall Strength Training Academy, right off Route 202. Actually, I'm sorry, it's right on Route 202 South in New Jersey, Branchburg, New Jersey. And I'm meeting with 2 good friends of mine, Michael Wolfert from Justifiable Force. Check out the website, and Andre Tasato from Defensive Fits. One word. Check out the website. Both these guys are defensive tactic instructors, and today we're going to talk about, we're going to show it actually, how to do a unsecured pat frisk. All right, guys, I'm giving the show over to you.
Hi, I'm Mike Wolfert from Justifiable Force. This is Andre Tasato from Defensive Fit. We're going to talk today about basic searching procedures of an unsecured inmate. So today we're going to cover a basic pat search against a non-secured individual. I always recommend if you're going to arrest somebody, lock somebody up, you always want to handcuff them first before you do a pat search to be more secure. But not in every instance are you going to be able to put mechanical restraints on. And there are a lot of routine procedural contact with an individual that you're going to have to pat search and either handcuff afterwards or not handcuff at all, depending on the situation. So right now it's going to be a pat search of a non-secured individual. So the first thing we always want to do before we do any type of pat search is maintain a reactionary gap between you and the person. We say reactionary gap because if that person decides to be non-cooperative, you have time to react in that instance. So we always say stay at least a 2 arms distance from you and the person. Number one thing we always want to do is we want to watch the person. We want to take a visual before we get close enough to go hands-on. And that visual is going to include the hands, waistband, and the face. And why do we say that? Because hands kill. Number one thing is to always monitor the hands, and we're looking at the waistband because that's where weapons are most commonly carried. It's going to be in the waistband. And also the face because the eyes are the windows to the soul, and they don't lie. So we can tell a person whether they're going to be agitated, whether they're going to comply, whether they're thinking about something to do. So there's some common things which go over in another video of pre-attack indicators that will tell us whether or not someone's going to be combative. But in a very instance of a basic search, we want to control the hands. So in this instance here, if someone has their hands in their pocket, the first thing we should be doing is controlling the hands. Take your hands out of your pocket, right? Get some type of commands. When I say commands, I say clear, concise instructions. All right? Instructions that everyone's going to be able to understand. All right? Take your hands out of your pocket. Let me see your hands. Clear, concise. At this point, when taking that visual, I'm once again looking hands, waistband, and the face. When I do that, I'm also going to now turn the person away from me. All right, so turn around. All right. I'm taking a visual of the backside. Put your arms up to the side. Palms facing me. All right. Once again, I'm taking a visual of the hands from this angle. Place your hand on the top of your head, interlace your fingers. Interlace their fingers. From here is when I'm going to make my approach. They complied to every instance, every command I've given, and show no signs of being combative. At this time, I'm going to secure the hands with my hand, grabbing inside and interlace their interlaced fingers and dropping my hand down. Now, from here is when I'm going to start to conduct the pat frisk. Spread your feet out. Okay. Now, from this position, I'm going to turn them to face the camera so we can see more of the pat search. I'm going to marry my foot to the inside. Let's back up a little bit here. Marry my foot to the inside. From here, I'm going to use my hand to check the front of the waistband, inside the thigh, outside the leg. From here, if I turn around, I can scoop down the back, across the waist. And at this point, I can change my hands, and I can go and do the other side. So from this side, I marry my other foot to the inside. I can hit the front, hit the waistband, inner thigh, ankle, as well as the back of the leg, all while maintaining visual contact with the person. So I'm never looking down. I'm always looking up. And also with my vision, as I look up, my peripheral vision can see. I can see what Stephen's doing, even though I'm looking at the waistband. Right? I don't want to stick my head so far in front of the person where they can grab me. Same thing here. As I bend down, I want to maintain a visual of the person. At any time, with my leg on the inside, if I feel something's happening, I can just bend my leg and immediately drop it to the ground to perform a takedown. Same thing can happen backwards. If I was here and something was happening, all I need to do is drop my elbow down, and that pulls the person going backwards. So depending upon what that person's doing, if they decide to defeat my grip at any time, I could utilize my lower half to effect the takedown, or I could use my upper body to effect the takedown from that position. So once again, if we're doing a search, I simply marry my foot. I want to hit the key critical areas, which is going to be primarily going to be the waistband, right? Upper chest, waistband, inside the thigh, and the ankle area, and also the small of the back. Those are the primary areas that I want to hit during this search. Chest, waistband. If they're wearing a collared shirt, sometimes you may flip through the collar. Depending on the type of garments they're wearing, you may want to stick your thumbs and run it through the waistband. So it really depends upon what kind of clothing they're going to wear, and depending upon how much of a search you're going to do, whether they have pockets or not, right? You may want to feel something in the pocket. You may have to want to go in there and grab it, depending upon what I feel from the outside, right? Depending upon your institutional policy. I might have to tell the person, stick your hand in your pocket and direct them to take it out. Those are decisions you have to make, right? By law, we're allowed to go inside of the inmate's pocket. So I always say is, if I feel something, I know that's not going to hurt me, that's not dangerous, well, I go right into the pocket. Depending on the institutional policy, who knows? They may tell you, let the inmate take it out. So that's really up to your own discretion. If I do find something during this pat down, what should I do immediately? All right, so if I find something during the pat down, I'm going to then hold on secure to it, obviously call the emergency procedure in your institution, and effectively control that situation. So during this pat down, if I find something that I believe to be a weapon, all right, what should I do? I immediately grab onto it. One hand or onto that weapon. If it's a weapon in the waistband, in the pocket, if I can effect some kind of takedown, depending upon the situation. But number one thing I do, I yell weapon in a loud, clear voice, and I alert others around me that there's a weapon in the area. Right? So they know responding that there's a weapon, and they know, hey, this is no longer just me taking an inmate down because I found some contraband. Now it's a fight for our lives. And that's what you got to really think about is, so controlling this person the best. If I do find a weapon in the waistband, all right, so from here, I immediately go securing onto it or simply two hands controlling the waist, all right, head is to the back, controlling that waistband. If he wants to reach and grab anything in his waistband, what's stopping him? My arms. He's got to go through my arms to grab whatever's in his waistband. So if his pocket's here, his waistband, if I immediately lock onto that and he's got to go and grab inside of his pocket, he's going to have to go through my arms. That's it. He's got to go through my body to get whatever's in that pocket. A lot of times, people will tell you to effect the takedown, but here it is. If I effect the takedown and I lose control of this waistband, lose control of the pocket, what am I doing now? His arms are free and his pocket's free, his waistband's free, and now we're all of a sudden fighting for a knife on the ground. I'd rather stay standing and control the waistline and control the pocket, because if he gets through my hands, then there's going to be a weapon in play. And it's more effective to control any type of weapon while it's still in his waistband or in his pocket than it is flailing around in his hand. That's why I attempt to control the waistband of the pocket if I do find anything that's going to harm me. Here it is. Depending upon the situation, any kind of contraband, whatever your departmental policy is on how to control contraband, that's what you have to continuously check. But these are just some tips or guidelines that I would recommend to do, especially with dealing with a weapon. One of the other things we want to address about putting people on the wall, right? I don't want to place someone on the wall and do a pat down, spread your feet out, because what's happening here, the person has 4 points of contact. So meaning, do a push up off the wall. He can push back off the wall. So I'm here doing a pat down. He decides to push off the wall. Now he has the ability to drive off of something. Be no different than he's in the prone position. He's trying to push his body up. That's why even from here, put your hand on top of your head and your lift fingers. We're off the wall. So at the very least, if something happened, I can always drive this person into the wall, right? And use that to now pin him against, versus he's already in that position to drive off and throw me back. All right, so just to review real quick. So we're here. He face me real quick. So we're here. What do I do first? Visual pat down with my eyes, right? Face, hands, waistband. Put your arm on top of your head and lift your fingers. I can do that first before he turns around. If I already took a visual of the hands and I want to secure his hands before he turns around, that's another option you can do as well. Turn around. He's already has his hands on top of his head interlaced. Spread your feet out. I secure the hands. I marry my foot and I do my pat down. Hitting the small of the back. From here, I checked all the critical areas. I took a visual. If anything happens, he decides to be combative, we have the answer for that. If I find something, we have the answer there. The only difference would be if this was a female individual, we would not use the palms of our hands to do the pat down. Right? When we get to the upper chest, we would just simply use the backs of our hands. We would just simply use the back of our hand as opposed to using our palm. Other than that, the pat down is going to be the same except for that general principle. So that's the one thing. I say routine, I say procedural, but that doesn't mean complacency. That doesn't mean when we do a pat down, it becomes an everyday part of the job, although that is a large part of the job. We have to approach it that anybody can be dangerous at any time. And that's what we have to look at when we think about it. Number one thing is safety, is awareness, and not being complacent in what we're doing. So stay vigilant, stay safe.
All right, so first off, guys, thank you guys. Michael Wolfert, Justifiable Force, Andre Tassano, Defensive Fit. Guys, if you guys have a chance, please check out their website, see what they're about. They have trained many law enforcement professionals, and I'm telling you something, guys, your training on both ends have saved lives. So that's why these are my go-to experts. I have 2 other videos I've done with them, handcuffing and also weapon retention. Great videos, by the way. And that's why I always go to you guys. And as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact. All right. So that's the Pat Frisk. Have they even talked about the women? I used to work in women's facilities, so the Pat Frisk would be the same, but you would sweep the breast with the back of your hands. Never palms. Never palms. Sad thing is, guys, when there's something a little funny here, is that when we did it, mind you, I didn't work at I've been out of a women's facility now since 2011. A lot of male officers didn't want the allegations, so a lot of them wouldn't even bother there. They would just go around. So a lot of the women would hide stuff there because they would know which officers wouldn't do it. So they would hide stuff there. And for the officers that did, and the inmates weren't used to it, Priya, they're going to claim Priya because they feel that they're being wrongfully touched. So guys, Wednesday, we're going to have a young lady on, as I mentioned. We're going to talk about dangers of having a prison pen pal. I'm telling you guys, it's a very unique story. Who she was writing to was not who he was when he got released. So I'm looking forward to sharing that story. And obviously, through our interactions, you guys will get to ask her questions directly. I mean, that's the cool thing. And I guess I'll see you guys Wednesday. It could be a surprise live. We don't know. Maybe Tuesday night. We'll figure it out. Their website, Patty, just check out Justifiable Force. They do have their own website. They're out of Jersey because I'm from Jersey. And don't forget, guys, books on the market if you want to pick it up. Inmate Manipulation Decoded. And you guys have my email, gangianthony@yahoo.com. If you feel there's any topics you want us to cover related to the prison, let me know. I'll devote a topic on it. I already thinking about doing something for you guys about dealing with transgenders inmates. Guys, there's a whole world in here in the prison that you guys have a chance now to know. And I'll bring on all experts. We'll answer all questions. And guys, if you look at my videos, I have over 1,100 something videos. It may have corrections as a foundation, but there's so much that could be applied to different things, especially when me and Connie are on, or Russ too. I mean, we have these deep dialogues that are, they're just beneficial to anybody who wants to listen to it, from my opinion. And now with you guys there, I'm only expecting my dialogues to get a lot better. So you guys are just making the show better by just your contributions. So, and your love, obviously, and support. All right, guys, love you guys. And please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.